Chapter 2556, Black Donkey. Thank you, Senior. Everyone bowed in respect to the Black Donkey. If it weren't for this Senior, He-Fong could have easily killed them all before leaving. After all, he was a heavenly venerate, a supremely powerful being. Senior, are we going to let He-Fong go just like that? What if he causes trouble elsewhere? Xiao Yingxiong asked. The Black Donkey chuckled and said, the old geezer has already reached his limit by ascending to the heavenly venerable tier. It's impossible for him to become a second-tier heavenly venerate. With such strength, how can he possibly engulf a dimension? What an absolute joke. It paused for a moment before continuing, compared to hysteria, he's nothing but trash. They all ground their teeth in their minds. This Black Donkey was also a heavenly venerate, right? He was speaking with such haughtiness, and it was truly rendering them speechless. However, this united origin manifestation fruit is genuine. If you ingest it, you can indeed raise your strength, the Black Donkey added. Everyone grimaced as they looked down at the fruit in their hands. This had been produced by a metal tree, so was it truly edible? Won't you hurry up? The celestial fruit has already been cut apart, so each moment that passes is a portion of its essence lost, the Black Donkey shouted. They hurriedly ingested their slice of celestial fruit. Even Wally was no exception. He wasn't a human, yet this didn't mean that he couldn't enjoy the benefits of celestial fruits. They sat down cross-legged, and only the large black dog and the Imperial Void Celestial King remained standing in boredom. The large black dog's eyes darted around, and at some point, he suddenly ran beside the Black Donkey, starting to act all friendly with it. Even though one was a dog and one was a donkey, they got along surprisingly well, and it wasn't long before they started to chat and laugh. In fact, they even wrapped their arms around each other's shoulders as if they were extremely good friends. Ling Han's intuition had been correct. People would often be attracted to those who were similar to them. The two animals were attracted to each other like glue, and it was clear that they shared a lot in common. However, Ling Han didn't have the time or effort to think about this now. He needed to refine the united origin manifestation fruit. To say nothing of the fact that this fruit needed to extract the blood essence of monarch stars to grow, just the fact that it needed to grow for several epochs was already a sign of its extraordinary nature. According to He-Fong, if this fruit fully matured, it could even help a ninth heaven celestial king directly ascend to the heavenly venerable tier. Even though its effects were slightly inferior now, and even though it had been divided into many pieces, it was still a great treasure for low-level celestial kings. In fact, this wasn't a pure celestial fruit in the ordinary sense. Instead, it was more like an alchemical pill. Of course, this kind of refinement technique was also extremely difficult to emulate. After channeling the essence of the fruit, Ling Han quickly discovered that not only could it advance his cultivation, but it could even push the indestructible heaven scroll to a higher level. However, he only had a single piece of this fruit, so if he concentrated its benefits on cultivation, his physique couldn't be improved. Which should he choose? Ling Han only hesitated for a brief moment before deciding to choose the indestructible heaven scroll. The physique and recovery ability of Heavenborn and Wally provoked him greatly. In the past, this had been his unique advantage. Now, however, he could only watch on as others also displayed this ability. This worried him greatly. He channeled the indestructible heaven scroll as he ravenously absorbed the essence of the united origin manifestation fruit. Symbols pulsated on his body, and it was as if he were comprehending the secrets of the heavens past and present. This celestial fruit had required several epochs to grow, so it naturally contained a grand amount of energy. Ling Han spent 39 entire days to completely refine its essence. He felt slight pity, but he also felt quite delighted. After reaching the Celestial King tier, the indestructible heaven scroll was divided into 9 levels. These were referred to as the indestructible Celestial King physique, and each level would correspond to one of the 9 heavens of the Celestial King tier. For example, the first level of the indestructible Celestial King physique would correspond to the defenses of a first heaven Celestial King. However, the advantage of the indestructible heaven scroll was that it trained the physique, something that would always exist and be effective. Right now, Ling Han had already raised his indestructible celestial king physique to the 6th level. This was already quite extraordinary. However, it was still some way off the peak stage of the 9th level. Moreover, the advance of the indestructible heavens scroll wouldn't be affected by one's cultivation. In other words, as long as Ling Han's comprehension ability was powerful enough, and as long as he had sufficient resources, he could completely raise his indestructible celestial king physique by another level, reaching the eternal divine metal level. At that point, his physical body would be as strong as divine metal. Above that level, and the final level, would be the indestructible heavenly venerate physique. However, even the karmic life heavenly venerable had only managed to comprehend half of this level. Even though one's physique would be more powerful than divine metal, it still wouldn't reach the defensive level of first-tier heavenly venerates. However, this couldn't be helped. The karmic life heavenly venerable had died early. Otherwise, he might have perfected this level long ago. My recovery ability has also improved markedly. The indestructible true fluid has also transformed into mist, flowing into every part of my body. It can automatically heal me even if I suffer severe wounds. However, I'm temporarily unable to use rising from the ashes. This pertained to the regulations. He was in the flaming frost realm now, so he needed to tweak the cultivation technique to align with the great Tao of this dimension. Moreover, regulations are only useful up to the celestial king tier. If I become a heavenly venerate, rising from the ashes will become ineffective. Celestial kings were blessed by heaven and earth, and it was because of this that they would have a sliver of a chance to revive. However, heavenly venerates definitely didn't enjoy such treatment. If they died, they would have truly died. Moreover, it seems like my evolution index has gone up a little as well, Ling Han mused. Before, it had already been infinitesimally close to 12. Now, however, he felt as if he had already reached this level. This was because his cultivation hadn't risen at all, yet his battle prowess had gone up by a significant amount. Thus, this could only be reflected in his evolution index. Ling Han was the first to finish digesting the fruit. Afterward, Hua Furong, Ji Wuming, and the others also finished one after another. Wally was the slowest, yet he also cared the least. After all, his body would automatically digest the essence. Since you're all done, it's time to P*SS off, the black donkey said. After tearing open space, he kicked each of them inside. He then stepped in himself. Whoosh! Space knitted back together, and everything immediately returned to normal. They traveled through the void, and it wasn't long before they all tumbled out again. Sure enough, they had already returned to the world's paramount martial academy. P*SS off, P*SS off, the black donkey said with impatience as it waved its hoof. You actually made me wait for so many days. What a bunch of high-maintenance brats. Girl over there, you're also a member of the martial academy now. The last sentence was targeted at Lu Yufei. Lu Yufei was instantly delighted. In fact, she had also screwed Ling Han and the others over, so she had been worried about them seeking revenge. Now that she had become a disciple of the world's paramount martial academy, however, her life would at least be safe. Humph. The Imperial Void Celestial King flicked his sleeve before leaving. He was feeling extremely ticked off. The others had also been wounded and gone through hardships, but they had at least received some benefits. As for him, to say nothing of losing a great portion of his vitality, even his ancient bell of Qian had lost a countless amount of its essence. This trip had truly screwed him over. As he glanced at Ling Han, killing intent pulsated in his eyes. This youth. He would definitely kill him. But now was not the time. The Imperial Void Celestial King gave a long roar as he quickly took his leave. Xiao Yingxiong and the others also left one after another. Even though they had gone through significant hardships, they had ultimately reaped huge rewards as well. They had all enjoyed a huge rise in cultivation. Thus, with some cultivation and accumulation, they could advance to the next level. Moreover, they could maintain a high cultivation speed for some time even after advancing. All in all, they had still gained more than they had lost. It was just that, they had failed to kill Ling Han. "Little Black, let's go," Ling Han said to the large black dog. Pung! Ling Han was instantly kicked down by a hoof. He looked up, only to see the two front hooves of the black donkey standing on his chest. Flames were blowing from the black donkey's nose as it said, "Brat, whom are you calling Little Black?" Great, I forgot that he was also black. Chapter 2557, Celestial King Graveyard. Ling Han chuckled, and said, "Sorry, Senior, I forgot about you." This underling was calling the large black dog. The black donkey didn't truly try to mess with him. It quickly stepped off him, and said, "Zhou Heng praised you to heaven and back, but after observing you left and right, it doesn't seem like there's anything special about you." Zhou Heng? Ling Han was slightly surprised, saying, "Senior, you have a good relationship with Zhou Heng?" "Heh, I single-handedly raised that brat," the black donkey said in a smug voice. Ling Han involuntarily glanced at the large black dog as he silently nodded in his mind. These two were definitely identical in personality. They weren't afraid of drowning in their own bullsh** tea. "Brat, what's with that look?" the large black dog and the black donkey instantly exclaimed in unison. As expected. "Did Senior Zhou Heng have any instructions for me?" Ling Han asked. The black donkey was slightly surprised, and it replied, "Indeed. The brat Zhou Heng indeed told me to deliver some words to you." "You're quite smart, huh?" Ling Han chuckled, and asked, "Has Senior Zhou Heng gone to the realm battlefield?" The black donkey nodded, and replied, "Recently, the attacks of hysteria have suddenly become increasingly wild and violent. An astonishing number of heavenly venerates have gone over to deal with it. In fact, hysteria has even launched some new attacks that we've never encountered before, so we've suffered very large losses. Because of this, the high-level heavenly venerates have all gone over to keep watch." "How grave is the situation?" Ling Han asked in a solemn voice. The realm battle was intricately linked with every single person. Once hysteria breached their defenses, the entire Genesis world would fall. "Brat, this isn't something that you should be worrying about now," the black donkey chided. "Aren't you curious about the message that the brat Zhou Heng left for you?" Only at this moment did Ling Han say, "Of course I'm curious." The black donkey couldn't help but feel stifled. Judging from the brat's expression, it was clear that he wasn't especially curious. He was simply acting in a perfunctory manner. The brat Zhou Heng said that if you're not looking to raise your cultivation quickly, you can very well stay in the martial academy and advance in a slow and steady manner. However, if you want to soar to the 9th heaven in the shortest time possible, you can indeed go to a certain place, the black donkey said anyway. Ling Han's eyes lit up. "What place?" "A very dangerous place. A single misstep can consign you to eternal doom," the black donkey said with seriousness. Not only was Ling Han unafraid, but he became even more excited. "Please tell me, Senior." The black donkey shook his head, saying, "Your reaction is truly just as Zhou Heng predicted. You're indeed interested in that place." Ling Han chuckled upon hearing this. The large black dog and the black donkey were like carbon copies of each other, yet he and Zhou Heng were also extremely similar people. What did it matter that the place was riddled with dangers? Dangers would definitely be accompanied by opportunities. Moreover, wasn't overcoming dangers and improving oneself the best method of cultivation? "That place is called the Celestial King Graveyard," the black donkey said. "Graveyard?" Ling Han wore a strange expression as he looked at the black donkey. This donkey wasn't telling him to rob graves, was it? It's not a true graveyard. Instead, far too many celestial kings have died there, so it's akin to a graveyard. The black donkey pondered for a moment before continuing, it should actually be called an unmarked burial ground. Many celestial kings aren't even buried." Ling Han was astonished. "Just what kind of place is this?" In the beginning, this was a prison that held some of the most depraved and sinister celestial kings, the Black Donkey explained. Since they were depraved and sinister, why weren't they directly executed? Ling Han asked. The Black Donkey shook its head, and replied, some celestial kings have an extremely powerful background, so many problems will be caused if they're executed. Ling Han fully understood at this moment. In this day and age, people with powerful backgrounds wouldn't be executed no matter how severe their crimes. At the most, they would only be banished and locked up. Of course, this was unless some paramount being acted quickly to execute them in the commotion. However, with the threat of hysteria, everyone's aim was naturally to resist hysteria's invasion. Because of this, they naturally needed to unite their elite forces. They couldn't cause strife because of one or two celestial kings, could they? It's because of this that the celestial king prison appeared, the Black Donkey said with a nod. It knew that Ling Han had already made sense of the situation. With the passing of time, the number of celestial kings in that prison also increased. Along with it, the prison also expanded in size. That's a land with no rules and no regulations. It's a land that's overflowing with slaughter, violence, and darkness. Perhaps just a single wrong glance can trigger a battle of life and death. At some point in time, a celestial king surprisingly snuck into that place, aiming to train himself. In just 100 million years, he directly rose from the 4th heaven to the 9th heaven. When he reappeared and spoke of his experiences, he caused a huge commotion. Many celestial kings tried to emulate him. However, with more people sneaking in, this phenomenon was naturally discovered by the celestial kings inside the prison. Thus, these people face brutal and cruel slaughter. In that place, celestial kings fall every day. The corpses of celestial kings are littered everywhere. However, nurtured by the blood of celestial kings, that place is also home to more celestial medicines than anywhere else. Brat, do you still want to go? The Black Donkey looked at Ling Han, continuing, if you choose to go, then you'll be responsible for your own life and death. In fact, in order to prevent heavenly venerates from interfering in saving people, several 7th-tier heavenly venerates came together to form a restriction. This land is easy to enter, but extremely difficult to exit. I also can't appear when you encounter perilous dangers. Only when the promised time arrives can I come over to pick you up. A grin instantly spread across Ling Han's face. Of course I want to go. The Black Donkey grimaced and said, you're not going to mull over this for a while longer? No need. Ling Han said in a resolute manner. The Black Donkey huffed and puffed, saying, it was predicted by that brat Zhou Heng again. I've lost again. Arf. You stinky brat. Will mulling over this for a while longer kill you? Flames were blowing from the Black Donkey's nose. This was a power transcendent above the regulations. In fact, this was terrifying fundamental power. Ling Han, the Empress, and the large black dog hurriedly retreated. Only Wally watched on with keen interest. His eyes gleamed, and it was as if he wanted to uncover the theory and equations behind this power. Ling Han chuckled, and said, I'm truly sorry, Senior Donkey. After venting its frustration for a while, the donkey suddenly chuckled, and said, no worries. As long as I send you away, can't I say anything that I want? In other words, the donkey was going to lie. Fuck. Just what kind of heavenly venerate is this? How utterly shameless. There was a glimmer in the large black dog's eyes, and he suddenly leaped over to hug the Black Donkey's leg, saying, brother, Grandpa Dog has finally found an idol. From today on, I'll become your follower. The Black Donkey was extremely smug. This was the epitome of shamelessness. Ling Han was rendered speechless. The two of them would screw over heaven knew how many people in the future. He turned to the Empress, and asked, what about you? She didn't speak, simply replying with a dazzling smile. Ling Han nodded in understanding. The Empress would definitely advance and retreat with him. Moreover, he possessed a spatial celestial tool now, and even ninth heaven celestial kings would have great difficulty trying to damage it. Thus, it was fairly safe for the Empress and the others to follow him. Of course, this was as long as he could keep himself safe. Brat, you definitely can't reveal your true identity after entering the Celestial King graveyard. The Celestial Kings there have been locked up for far too long, so many of them have gone cuckoo in the head. Moreover, murders occur every day, so all of the people there are crazy psychopaths. They absolutely abhor Celestial Kings from the outside world who go there to train. So, if you're exposed, you'll be hunted by everyone. It'll be useless even if you have 3 heads and 6 arms, and even if you've reached the 9th heaven. With a punch each, they can pummel you into the ground. The black donkey warned him of the dangers. Ling Han nodded, saying, "Rest assured, Senior Donkey. I'll definitely be careful." "Tisk, rest assured? Just who do you think you are? Are you worthy of my worry?" the black donkey said with a snicker. However, Ling Han chuckled upon hearing this. The black donkey was just like the large black dog. They were indeed detestable, yet they also had their soft side. However, they would always hide this side of themselves and purposefully speak in a depraved manner. Chapter 2558, Entering the Celestial King Graveyard. Ling Han returned to his abode first. His trip to the Celestial King Graveyard certainly wasn't a 1 or 2 day trip. Thus, he needed to organize everything first. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro and the other women in his spatial celestial tool naturally didn't have any complaints. They were all willing to follow Ling Han. Ling Han went to visit the Rain Emperor, telling him about this situation. The Rain Emperor expressed that he hadn't discovered his own path yet, so he needed to stay in the martial academy to improve his cultivation fundamentals for a while. However, he would definitely go when the time was right. Ling Han naturally supported his second brother's decision. He then went to visit Yan Xianlu and the others. He also went to visit Ling Hua and the others, leaving them some alchemical pills. He then set a time limit for himself. He planned to stay in the Celestial King graveyard for 100 million years. In these 100 million years, he would be unable to leave. He could only wait for this time limit to approach. Only then would the black donkey come over to collect him. Of course, if he became a heavenly venerate, he could also forcefully tear open a corner of the prison to leave. In any case, this was indeed a risky decision. Neither the large black dog nor Wally expressed a desire to travel with him. They were extremely unloyal. Ling Han grabbed Wally, and had a detailed discussion with him for many days, asking him to analyze his cultivation path. He had explored and walked this path by himself, so it was possible that he was lacking in some detailed areas. Meanwhile, Wally possessed the most comprehensive analytical ability. Of course, Ling Han wouldn't believe Wally's analysis without question. Instead, he would use it as a reference. He naturally didn't have time to challenge the 9 Deaths formation again. However, he heard that Heavenborn had suddenly improved significantly, rising up the leaderboard of the 5th formation by a great amount. In fact, he even rose above Amu and Kinyu, fully displaying his freakish abilities. Ling Han became even more resolute. He definitely had to surpass Heavenborn in terms of cultivation. He would then pummel him and free the karmic life Heavenly Venerable's sliver of divine sense, thereby allowing him to revive. He temporarily put down his animosity with Heavenborn, Xiaoingxiong, and the others. With the black donkey as his guide, he set off for the Celestial King graveyard. In fact, many disciples of the Martial Academy are in there. However, they definitely won't reveal their identity. So just in case you come across them, you don't need to show any mercy, either. Otherwise, you'll be seeking death, the black donkey warned. Ling Han nodded in understanding. Only if he raised his indestructible Celestial King physique to the 9th level could he retreat with composure even against 9th Heaven Celestial Kings. Otherwise, if he were attacked by countless Celestial Kings, he would definitely suffer a miserable fate. This was clear when looking at the Imperial Void Celestial King. He was definitely an elite among celestial kings, yet hadn't he been captured when facing off against the tens of thousands of metal chains? Enough ants could bite an elephant to death. This was not to mention the great number of supreme talents in the celestial king graveyard. The black donkey tore open space. Heavenly venerates truly traveled at a terrifying speed. However, the black donkey was still extremely careful because the void was filled with dangers. It was possible that hysteria might attack them. Even though the donkey was a first-tier heavenly venerate, it was still very likely that it would be killed. Fortunately, they arrived at the graveyard without a hitch. Ling Han couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Was the title of graveyard not a description only? Why had he been brought to a real graveyard? This is the entrance, dum-dum, the black donkey chided. It brought Ling Han to a large grave before raising its hoof to press the tombstone. The symbols on the tombstone instantly lit up. Entering is easy, but exiting is as difficult as ascending the heavens, it warned again. During these 100 million years, you won't receive help from anyone. You can only rely on yourself. I understand, Ling Han said with a nod. Off you go, the black donkey said, giving him a kick. Pung! Ling Han crashed headfirst into the tombstone. His body directly sank inside, quickly disappearing without a trace. Ah, I'm so eager with anticipation. After 100 million years, just what kind of lofty heights will this brat reach? The black donkey said as it rubbed its hooves. It tore open space and stepped inside. The space fissure then instantly knitted back together, leaving only a faint ripple. Several days later, 3 figures flew over. As if they were striding across time itself, they were radiating with a boundless and domineering aura. The 3 people all had 7 ribbons of iridescent light wrapped around them, signifying their level as 7th heaven celestial kings. They were none other than Gu Hui, Miao Hua, and Xiaoing Xiong. After digesting the United Origin manifestation fruit, they had all advanced in a short amount of time, reaching the 7th heaven. With their aptitude as supreme monarch stars, their battle prowess was naturally far superior to this level. That brat entered the celestial king graveyard. With his freakish talent, if we allow him to grow freely, his cultivation level will definitely be above ours when he returns. We have to eliminate him. Moreover, he harbors great secrets, and I suspect that he's been tempered by 6 fundamental powers. Otherwise, there's no way his body art can be so freakish. We'll kill him and snatch this secret technique. At that time, our chance of ascending to the heavenly venerable tier will definitely increase greatly. The 3 of them raised their hands, placing them on the large tombstone. Symbols instantly lit up. The celestial king graveyard was easy to enter but difficult to exit. Any celestial king could open the gates to enter with ease. However, what if they wanted to exit? Even 9th heaven celestial kings could only stare on in helplessness. Only heavenly venerates could tear open the restrictions with their own strength. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 people also entered the celestial king graveyard. Ling Han stumbled as he was kicked forward. When he stabilized himself, he realized that he had already arrived in a dark and gloomy place. The sky was filled with dark clouds, and the surrounding land was also covered in a rising black aura that transformed into all kinds of eerie symbols. He was in no rush to leave. Instead, he familiarized himself with the environment first. Only after a while did he stand up to observe his surroundings. This was a desolate mountain where not a single blade of grass grew. He unleashed his celestial king power and advanced in a certain direction. After 3 days, a large city appeared before him. Ghost King City. These were the 3 large words written above the city gates. The strokes of these characters were filled with strength, and they radiated with a domineering but more so wild aura. This was the aura of a haughty and ruthless person with boundless ambitions. Surprisingly, there were people standing guard outside the city. However, these weren't celestial kings. Instead, they were ascending origin tier cultivators. Ling Han found this especially strange. Wasn't this a prison for celestial kings? However, he quickly came to a realization. There were celestial kings who only pursued the pinnacle of cultivation, yet there were also celestial kings who only cared about enjoyment. This was a land of slaughter, so it naturally inspired another kind of carnal desire as well. As such, it wasn't strange for celestial kings to bear children and have descendants. Halt! Ling Han was immediately blocked as he approached the city gates. Do you have a permit to enter? They asked. Ling Han was already roughly aware of the situation. Numerous powerful celestial kings had formed their own territories here, and Ghost King City was one of these territories. A permit to enter was the proof of identity created by these forces, proving that one was a member. However, the different forces didn't forbid people from traveling around. Everything would be fine as long as they could pay the fee to enter. Ling Han shook his head. I only just arrived here, so I don't have a permit. Upon hearing this, the guards instantly stood on alert as if they had come across a powerful enemy. Someone sent a signal, and the seventh heaven celestial king immediately appeared, looking Ling Han up and down. What crime did you commit? The celestial king asked. Ling Han smiled faintly, and replied, I killed a member of the world's paramount martial academy. I've been sentenced to this place for eternity. The seventh heaven celestial king couldn't help but feel astonished. The title of world's paramount martial academy carried far too much weight. Those who could enter were at least monarch tiers, with some of them even being monarch stars or supreme monarch stars. In fact, there were even freaks with evolution indices of 12. A serious expression spread across his face, and he asked, Whom did you kill? Why did you kill them? The black donkey had already discussed this with Ling Han. He was called Li Long now, and he had indeed killed a person called Zhao Ting. This information could be found in the world's paramount martial academy. Chapter 2559, Ghost King City. Li Long and Zhao Ting had indeed been disciples of the world's paramount martial academy. Moreover, Li Long had indeed killed Zhao Ting. However, Li Long had been locked up by the black donkey, and he hadn't actually entered the celestial king graveyard. He was replaced by Ling Han. With a heavenly venerate helping Ling Han create a fake identity, it would be impossible for others to see through him, even if they were a disciple of the world's paramount martial academy, and even if they were extremely knowledgeable about the world's paramount martial academy. The seventh heaven celestial king carefully interrogated him. In this place, they most detested celestial kings who entered to train, using them as whetstones. Thus, the numerous forces had all reached a consensus. If such a person appeared, they would all hunt down and kill them. However, Ling Han's replies were all logical and watertight. In the end, the celestial king organized a place for him to stay. He would head off to corroborate Ling Han's story. These were the rules. Everyone who entered would have to experience this. Ling Han naturally wasn't worried. Right now, he was none other than Li Long. The black donkey had created a disguise for him, and it was good enough to last for hundreds of millions of years. Sure enough, the seventh heaven celestial king returned after several days, and handed Ling Han a permit. Ling Han was slightly astonished as he held the permit. It was indeed good that his identity had been confirmed. However, this place was clearly a cage, yet it was also abundantly obvious that the people here had methods to communicate with those in the outside world. Otherwise, how could they have confirmed his story? He quickly pushed his astonishment aside. He was here to rapidly increase his cultivation. Nothing else mattered. Friendly, are you interested in joining the Ghost King army? The seventh heaven celestial king asked. Li Long was a disciple of the world's paramount martial academy. Being able to enter this martial academy proved that he was no ordinary monarch tier. Rather, he was someone who was destined to become a ninth heaven celestial king in the future. Thus, it was necessary to extend an invitation to such a person. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I've been exiled here, so I'm not in a great mood. Let me familiarize with this place myself. The seventh heaven celestial king nodded, and said, That's fine too. However, friendly, once you become familiar with this place, perhaps you'll discover that it's akin to heaven. Oh, that's right, I'm Xiang Ming, he said in self-introduction. Ling Han nodded, clasping his hands and saying, "Thank you for your interest, Lord Xiang." Xiang Ming took his leave. Meanwhile, Ling Han had a permit now, so he had the right to freely travel around the Celestial King graveyard. Even though the Black Donkey had told him some information about the Celestial King graveyard, it was a heavenly venerate, after all, so it wouldn't show much interest in a place that locked up Celestial Kings. Thus, Ling Han needed to explore the intricacies himself. Regarding the situation of Ghost King City, he had learned about some of it from Xiang Ming. Add to that his own exploration, and he was gradually forming a good grasp. Ghost King City was naturally a force. In fact, each city here was an independent force. There were over 29th Heaven Celestial Kings guarding Ghost King City, with the Azure Ghost Celestial King being their leader. Even though they were all Celestial Kings, there was definitely one among them who was the strongest. This Azure Ghost Celestial King was that person, and he was more so renowned for his vicious nature. According to rumors, he had indulged in slaughter and rape in the past. He had killed heaven knows how many prodigies who had limitless potential, and he had assaulted heaven knows how many female celestial kings. Theoretically speaking, he should have been executed hundreds of times over. However, his uncle was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, so he hadn't been killed. Instead, he had been banished to this place. The Azure Ghost Celestial King took to this place like a fish to water. He gathered a huge crowd of people who were as debauched as him, founding Ghost King City. Those who submitted to him lived, and those who opposed him died. Even in a terrible place such as the Celestial King Graveyard, Ghost King City was a well-renowned city of slaughter. This place was indeed filled with murder and death. In just 3 days, Ling Han had already witnessed 7 large battles, of which 2 involved the death of Celestial Kings. In the other 5 battles, there were also Celestial Kings who became severely wounded. Regarding the spark behind these 7 battles, however, these were all extremely insignificant events. In fact, these were things that could be resolved with a few sentences. Here, however, they could only be resolved with fresh blood. Here, benevolence would be a bane. However, this was also good. Ling Han was here to engage in endless battle. By lingering on the border of life and death, and by being under immense pressure, he'd see his cultivation forced to advance at a rapid speed. Ling Han set off. Staying in the inn would indeed be slightly safer, but this wasn't his intention for coming here. He arrived at the ground floor of the inn, which also served alcohol and food. He ordered a few dishes and also a pot of alcohol. He drank slowly. Even though this was a land of death, the food was surprisingly quite appetizing and delicious. It was said that the meat all came from Celestial King tier immortal beast. Of course, non-human Celestial Kings could also order the meat of human Celestial Kings to enjoy. Here, there were no rules or regulations. The alcohol was also fragrant, and even though Ling Han was already a 3rd Heaven Celestial King, he still felt slightly woozy after taking a few sips. "Brat, my young master wants to meet you." "Come with me," a Celestial King said as he appeared before Ling Han. He was a sturdily built middle-aged man who appeared to be around 30 years old. Ling Han was astonished. He had only just arrived here, so he most certainly hadn't offended anyone yet. So, why did some random young master want to meet him? "Who's your young master?" he asked. "So you really are a newbie." "You don't even know my young master," the Celestial King said with a disdainful sneer. Ling Han felt speechless. Those who could become Celestial Kings should have been talented and ambitious people, yet this person was relishing his role as a lackey. The Celestial King continued, "My young master is the esteemed Tang Yuan, the only child of Lord Tang Mingbo." Tang Mingbo? Ling Han had heard of this person. Tang Mingbo was one of the 9th Heaven Celestial Kings of Ghost King City. Thus, he could also be considered as a ruler of this city. It was no wonder that Tang Yuan was so arrogant and haughty. With a 9th Heaven Celestial King as his father, he indeed had a powerful background. However, this still didn't explain why Tang Yuan had suddenly taken interest in him. Huh? Why aren't you moving? The Celestial King asked in astonishment. He had already explained Tang Yuan's identity, yet this brat still dared to remain sitting? Ling Han pondered for a moment. Even though he had the large black dog and Zhou Hang, they couldn't help him at all in this place. Heavenly venerates wouldn't enter this place, and ninth heaven celestial kings would be pummeled into smithereens if they entered. The Celestial King graveyard was a lawless land. If he chose to oppose Tang Yuan, it was extremely likely that he would immediately end up at odds with Tang Mingbo. He had indeed entered this place to battle, and it was inevitable that he would battle with ninth heaven celestial kings in the future. However, now wasn't the time. Just like a person couldn't become a fatty with a single bite of food, Ling Han couldn't challenge ninth heaven celestial kings at this moment either. Otherwise, he would be beaten black and blue. Refusing would be a foolish decision. So be it. He would head over to see what this Tang Yuan was playing at. Ling Han stood up and said nonchalantly, "Lead the way." The Celestial King was instantly filled with dissatisfaction. Did this person think he was some big shot? He was a measly third heaven Celestial King, worth less than a fart in the Celestial King graveyard. He was just about to speak, yet he suddenly caught Ling Han's gaze, so piercing that it could seemingly reach his heart. He involuntarily shuddered, with an indescribable cold chill running down his spine. He immediately swallowed his words. Perhaps Tang Yuan could chide such a person. However, he definitely couldn't provoke him. He humphed, and said, "Follow me." He led the way, guiding Ling Han out of the inn and to a courtyard. After entering the courtyard, they passed many rooms and hallways before finally arriving in a garden. Here, several young people were drinking and enjoying entertainment. There were also beautiful women performing graceful dances. With such a scene, who would believe that this was a prison? Chapter 2560, Tournament of Death. Young Master, Li Long has arrived. The Celestial King kneeled on one knee as he reported respectfully. A young man turned around, glancing at Ling Han with a smile, and saying, "What are you standing there in a daze for? Come, take a seat." He gestured at Ling Han, pointing to an empty seat. Ling Han walked over and went to sit down on the empty seat. However, just as his bottom was about to touch the seat, one of the youths suddenly lashed out. "Pa!" The seat beneath him instantly exploded into smithereens. At the same time, an overwhelming force pressed down, trying to push Ling Han to the ground. The person who had lashed out had 3 iridescent ribbons around him, signifying his status as a third heaven celestial king. Was he trying to establish dominance? Ling Han sat down as if there were truly a seat beneath him. Meanwhile, he easily dispersed the force that the Celestial King had unleashed. He then casually retrieved a chair from his spatial celestial tool and put it beneath himself. "Is this how young Master Tang welcomes his guests?" Ling Han said with a smile. "He's so poor that the guests need to prepare their own chairs?" "Ha ha ha ha." Tang Yuan immediately roared with laughter. He looked at the Celestial King who had lashed out, and said, "See, Luo Yang, this is a prodigy from the world's paramount martial academy. Powerful just as expected, right?" The Celestial King, called Luo Yang, simply shrugged and smiled. He hadn't unleashed his full strength just then, and he was confident that he could definitely defeat Ling Han if he used his full strength. These wealthy second generations had all been born and raised in this place. Thus, they naturally didn't think much of the world's paramount martial academy. "He's decently powerful," he replied. "This young master especially appreciates young prodigies." Tang Yuan pointed at himself and continued, "I'll give you an opportunity. Become my follower, and I can guarantee that you can do as you please in Ghost King City. No one will dare to touch a single hair of yours. Hurry up and thank young Master Tang," the youths who were enjoying the performances immediately said to Ling Han. Ling Han indeed wanted to keep a low profile. However, he definitely wouldn't resign himself to becoming someone else's dog. He smiled faintly, and replied, "Thank you for your appreciation, young Master Tang. However, I'm accustomed to being by myself, so forgive me if I want to keep things this way." Luo Yang stood up, and exclaimed, "Li Long." There was a cold smile on his face, and he said, "Don't be an ungrateful wretch. You think this is still the world's paramount martial academy? You think you're still a revered prodigy?" His words were dripping with jealousy. Even though they were all young masters and whatnot, at the end of the day, were they not all prisoners? They could only act as wanton rulers of this small place. They could only be frogs at the bottom of a well. Moreover, they had no other choice. They hadn't been locked here because they had committed some atrocious crime, but they had instead been locked here because their parents were prisoners in this place. They had been born with a stain to their name. They would be trapped here for eternity. Thus, they acted in flagrant and wanton manners, using such methods to express their dissatisfaction and vexation. Moreover, they were all extremely jealous of outsiders. This was because they at least had a choice. Ling Han remained calmly seated, saying, "Are you trying to lecture me? You're asking for a beating." Luo Yang immediately lashed out at Ling Han. "I let things slip the first time, but that doesn't mean I'm a pushover," Ling Han said in a baleful voice. He clenched his fists and unleashed a punch at Luo Yang. Pung! Their fists collided, and Luo Yang instantly moaned in pain as he was sent flying. He slammed into a decorative rock, smashing it into smithereens. Only then did he come to a stop. Ling Han was astonished. This wasn't because he hadn't smashed Luo Yang to bits. He had suppressed some of his strength, and he was very clear about this. Instead, he was astonished because Luo Yang had come to a stop after only breaking a single rock. By his estimation, Luo Yang should have shot through half of the city. This rock was extremely tough. "Ha ha ha ha. Sure enough, you're extremely powerful," Tang Yuan said with applause. "You sent Luo Yang flying with a single punch. You can definitely rank inside the top 10 among third heaven celestial kings." The other young celestial kings were all stunned into silence. Meanwhile, Luo Yang picked himself with great struggle and difficulty, sheer disbelief on his face. Initially, he hadn't believed that people from the world's paramount martial academy would be that much more powerful. However, even though they were at the same cultivation level, he had been sent flying with a single punch. The gulf between them was as clear as could be. However, Luo Yang more so felt a sense of resentment. He had actually been humiliated before so many people. If it weren't for Tang Yuan not commanding him to, he would have definitely called for reinforcements to kill Ling Han on the spot. In any case, it was extremely normal for celestial kings to die in this place. Tang Yuan stopped his applause, saying, "Taking into account your strength, I can permit you not to become a dog. How about this, fight in the tournament of death for me? As long as you win the title of Blood Martial King, I'll bestow you with an ascending dragon pill." "Young Master Tang," the other youths exclaimed in astonishment and jealousy. They involuntarily stood up. Ling Han was also surprised. Was this ascending dragon pill extremely freakish? Why were the youths all acting so shocked? "You don't know what the ascending dragon pill is?" one of the young celestial kings asked as he glanced at Ling Han. "The ascending dragon pill can increase our chance of advancing to the next level. Moreover, its effects can be stacked to reach a maximum of 10%. 10%. Even though this didn't look like much, each step forward in the celestial king tier was as difficult as ascending the heavens. To the majority of celestial kings, they would be trapped at a certain cultivation level for all of their lives. For example, the 4th heaven or the 7th heaven. Thus, to say nothing of a 10% increase in chance of breaking through, even a 1% increase or a 0.1% increase would be incredibly valuable. People would fight tooth and nail for such a pill. It was no wonder that the youths all stood up in shock upon hearing this. Ling Han also came to a realization. No wonder these people could reach the second heaven or third heaven even though they possessed such mediocre aptitudes. They had most likely advanced thanks to ascending dragon pills. However, this ascending dragon pill was far too freakish. It actually had such astonishing effects. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, "What's this about the Tournament of Death? This is naturally a place for battle. Moreover, only by winning 10 battles in a row can one acquire the title of Blood Martial King," a celestial king explained. "However, don't be mistaken in thinking that this is easy to achieve. On average, such a person only appears once every 100 years. Moreover, the celestial king paused as if purposefully trying to frighten Ling Han. The fatality rate in the Tournament of Death is 40%. Ling Han cracked a grin, saying, "Sounds interesting. Count me in." He had come here to do battle, so this Tournament of Death was most likely his best choice. The young celestial kings were all astounded. They had already explained the grave dangers of the Tournament of Death, yet this person had still decided to join without a shred of hesitation. Just how confident was he? Tang Yuan clapped his hands and roared with laughter. "Very well. Very well. I wasn't mistaken in inviting you, Li Long. If you can obtain the title of Blood Martial King, I definitely won't treat you poorly." Ling Han simply replied with a faint smile. He naturally wouldn't pay much attention to this second-generation young master. "Come, let's drink," Tang Yuan said in delight. He clinked glasses with the others, and it wasn't long before he became slightly drunk. This alcohol was extremely potent, so much so that even Ling Han could barely withstand it with his strength. This was to say nothing of ordinary celestial kings. Tang Yuan was extremely keen, and he immediately made arrangements for Ling Han, marking down a battle in 3 days' time. Ling Han also learned more about the Tournament of Death. Chapter 2561, First Battle. The Tournament of Death was just as its name stated. Since its inception, countless celestial kings had already been killed. Indeed, the stadium in which it was held was the most renowned land of death in the entire city. At the same time, it was also its most popular spot. Upon being consigned to this tournament, one would be in danger of death at all times. Thus, each person would become wild and savage. They would be filled with excitement upon seeing others bleeding and wounded, or even dead. Moreover, the cultivation speed of these people was also especially quick. It was as if heaven and earth were compensating them. Those who had the potential to become a celestial king would all ascend to the celestial king tier at an astonishing speed. Of course, there were also those who were less gifted, and they would quickly become stuck at the mountain river tier, severing mundane tier, and so on. Thus, even though celestial kings were killed all the time, the number of celestial kings always remained consistently high. Firstly, there were celestial kings who had been banished here from the outside world. Secondly, there were celestial kings who were indigenous to this land. Ling Han sighed with emotion. Perhaps only transcendent dimensions could produce such an environment. Otherwise, even taking into account the celestial kings who were battling against the foreign realm, the celestial realm only had several tens of thousands of celestial kings. This was at most the same as the number in this city. It would be foolish to underestimate the difficulty of winning 10 battles in a row and becoming the Blood Martial King. This was unfathomably difficult. This was because winning the first 5 battles in a row would be easy. However, after reaching this number, the tournament officials would start to target such participants, sending out elites to hunt them down. In fact, in the final battle, they might even send out a Blood Martial King to battle against them. Of course, the opposing celestial kings would be at the same cultivation level. At most, there would only be a gap of 1 minor tier between them. However, in such situations, one could choose to reject the battle and request a different opponent. However, they could only do this a maximum of 3 times. Otherwise, their streak would be reset to 0. Above the Blood Martial King, there was also the 100 Victory Blood Martial King and the 1000 Victory Blood Martial King. These titles didn't require a victory streak. Instead, they only required one to win 100 battles or 1,000 battles, respectively. In the Celestial King graveyard, it wasn't only Ghost King's city that enjoyed this kind of tournament of death. Moreover, young masters like Tang Yuan would also take pride in having a blood martial king under their wing. They would oftentimes send their blood martial king to battle with the blood martial king of someone else. Tang Yuan had already owned a blood martial king before. Moreover, this blood martial king had achieved 97 victories. However, as he was charging toward the title of 100 victory blood martial king, he had been targeted and killed by the force of another young master in the city. Tang Yuan had lost a lot of face because of this, and it also pushed him to have several fierce battles with that young master. That young master was Lu Li, the son of another ninth heaven celestial king of the city, Lu Gaoquan. That young master was also a depraved wretch, and he had poisoned the alcohol of Tang Yuan's blood martial king, causing his battle prowess to fall dramatically. In the end, this blood martial king was unable to escape death. These two young masters had already been at odds because of the conflict and animosity between their fathers. After this event, they became even more hostile, breaking into a fight each time they came across each other. It was just that no one else was killed. As for Luo Yang and the others, they were also second-generation young masters. Their parents were either 8th heaven celestial kings or 7th heaven celestial kings, and these celestial kings were all underlings of Tang Yuan's father, Tang Mingbo. Thus, they all treated Tang Yuan as their leader. This was an interest group where glory and humiliation were shared. Li Long, if you manage to kill the blood martial king of that bastard Lu Li, I'll reward you with another ascending dragon pill. Tang Yuan shouted in a drunken stupor. He promised Ling Han even more rewards. Ling Han replied with a faint smile. His evolution index had already reached 12, so did he really need any ascending dragon pills? However, he certainly wasn't against obtaining some to examine. Luo Yang and the others were extremely jealous. However, they immediately thought of the immense difficulty of becoming a blood martial king, and they immediately recalled the sly and sinister nature of Lu Li. Once he learned of Ling Han's existence, he would definitely launch a deadly assault. To say nothing of killing Lu Li's blood martial king, becoming a blood martial king was already a profound challenge. It was only a matter of time before Ling Han lost his head. They all sneered in their minds. Would an ascending dragon pill be so easy to obtain? Ling Han didn't return to the inn. After all, second-generation young masters like Tang Yuan also understood how to win over their underlings. He organized a courtyard for Ling Han, and he even sent over 3 beautiful maidservants to accompany him. However, they were naturally rejected by Ling Han. Even though Tang Yuan was astonished by this, there was actually a man who wasn't interested in beautiful women. This also caused him to hold Ling Han in higher regard. He was filled with anticipation. Tang Yuan was a fairly powerful person in the city, so under his instructions, he disrupted the tournament's original schedule and forcefully slid Ling Han in. 3 days later, Ling Han appeared in the stadium. Li Long, you need to win some honor for this young master. Tang Yuan said to Ling Han in the resting area. I've put a huge wager on you, so if you dare to lose, you either die in the arena, or I'll personally kill you and hang your head on the flag in the stadium. After becoming sober, Tang Yuan immediately started to show his cruel and domineering side. Whoever disappointed him would be punished with death. This was his iron rule. Ling Han felt a strong urge to kill Tang Yuan. However, he forcefully suppressed this urge. He promised himself that he would definitely kill this young master before he left the Celestial King graveyard. Did Tang Yuan truly think that he could act with wanton freedom just because his father was a 9th heaven Celestial King? Tang Yuan naturally couldn't read Ling Han's mind. Otherwise, he would definitely sentence Ling Han to death. Upon seeing Ling Han become speechless, he simply thought that Ling Han had been frightened by his threat. He involuntarily smiled in satisfaction. However, if you perform well, I won't mistreat you either. I'll reward you with what you deserve. His tone suddenly changed. After issuing a threat, he then hung a carrot before Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't be bothered responding. When the drums started to beat, he strode out of the resting area and into the arena. Since this stadium allowed celestial kings to do battle, its defensive mechanisms were naturally extremely powerful. Otherwise, just a single blow from a celestial king could obliterate this entire stadium. Ling Han had already witnessed the toughness of the rock here. When he had struck Luo Yang, the latter had surprisingly come to a stop after smashing only a single rock. This was proof enough of their sturdy nature. Was this done by the heavenly venerates to prevent the celestial kings here from escaping, and so the rocks and earth here were all extremely sturdy? Ling Han's mind ran wild. At this moment, his opponent appeared from the other end. On the black side, we have Li Long. This is a competitor personally chosen by Tang Yuan, young Master Tang. He's at the third heaven, but his strength is also unknown. Open your eyes, everyone, witness his strength for yourself, the commentator said loudly. He was also a celestial king. Even though he was only at the first heaven, it wasn't difficult for his voice to reach every corner of the stadium. His commentary was also filled with passion and enthusiasm, and he instantly enlivened the atmosphere in the stadium, eliciting a series of shouts and whistles. On the red side, we have a familiar competitor, the commentator continued. Ebony, a prodigy from the Tanya realm. He possesses a terrifying weapon, and he has the title of demonic saw killer. He's already won 4 battles in a row. Today, will Li Long end Ebony's streak, or will Ebony add to his incredible run? If Ebony wins another battle, he'll become a true challenger for the title of Blood Martial King. Is everyone excited? Boom! Everyone shouted in delight and excitement. The audience consisted of all kinds of people, with males, females, old, and young. However, all of them were fervent with excitement, their screams loud and hysterical. Tang Yuan, is this your new pet? A young man asked Tang Yuan in the VIP stands. His face was filled with contempt and disdain. Chapter 2562, Poisonous Spider. Oh, you don't think much of him? Tang Yuan asked in retort. This youth was sitting in the same row as Tang Yuan. Meanwhile, Luo Yang and the others were sitting in the row behind them. It was clear that this youth enjoyed a similar status to Tang Yuan's. He was called Zhao Shuang, and he was also the son of a 9th heaven celestial king. Otherwise, he naturally wouldn't have the right to sit next to Tang Yuan. He flicked his gaze between Ling Han and Ebony before saying, even though Ebony is also at the 3rd heaven, he's a monarch tier on top of that. It's just that he failed to pass the 9 deaths formation of the world's paramount martial academy. However, his strength can't be underestimated. Moreover, he also has a weapon from the technology realm, the insanely powerful demonic saw. It's because of this that he was able to kill a disciple of the martial academy. However, it was because they didn't want to enrage the heavenly venerate of that realm that they banished him here. However, your pet is completely unremarkable. As such, how can he rival Ebony? Tang Yuan roared with laughter, and said, why don't we make a bet? Using what? Zhao Shuang asked. He didn't back down. We'll wager 3 Brahman celestial flowers. Tang Yuan said after pondering for a brief moment. Zhao Shuang's eyes instantly lit up. Tang Yuan, you're that confident? Brahman celestial flowers were incredibly valuable. Even though Tang Yuan could produce some, he would definitely feel pain for some time. In fact, he had already lost a huge sum when his blood martial king had lost a while ago. He was already a poor sod, yet he still dared to make such a large wager. He was that confident. However, after glancing at Ling Han again, Zhao Shuang smiled and said, deal. He couldn't see any redeeming features in Ling Han at all. He simply thought that Tang Yuan was desperately trying to save face. Tang Yuan laughed loudly, and said in a calm voice, this Li Long is a disciple of the world's paramount martial academy. What? Zhao Shuang exclaimed in astonishment. Being able to enter the world's paramount martial academy, Ling Han was at least a monarch tier. Moreover, he was definitely an elite among monarch tiers. After all, not all monarch tiers could pass the 9 deaths formation. Ebony was the best example of this. However, after some further thought, Zhao Shuang immediately calmed down. What did it matter that Ling Han was a disciple of the martial academy? Ebony had already killed one. However, Tang Yuan wore a wide smile as he continued, "Do you know? This person was banished here because he killed a disciple of the martial academy." Zhao Shuang was astonished again. Ling Han had also killed a disciple of the martial academy? He couldn't help but ask, "How do you know?" Tang Yuan was extremely smug as he replied, "He only entered the Celestial King graveyard a few days ago, and when entered the city, he was coincidentally encountered by Xiang Jun's father. After receiving this news, I hurriedly invited him over." Zhao Shuang gritted his teeth and said, "Xiang Ming is your father's subordinate." "I actually didn't receive any news of this at all." As it turns out, this news was suppressed by Xiang Ming. Tang Yuan roared with laughter. There were over 29th Heaven Celestial Kings in Ghost King City, and even though the Azure Ghost Celestial King was the leader, each person had their own personal interests. Thus, it was inevitable that there would be schemes and trickery, conflict and robbery. "What's so funny?" a seductive voice suddenly said. They looked over, only to see a woman in black walking over. She was wearing a dress, yet not only were her jade-like arms revealed, but even a large portion of her breasts were exposed. Their voluptuous shape was extremely clear. Her dress was only knee-length as well, revealing her pale lower legs. She wasn't wearing shoes, and her dainty pale and jade-like feet were exposed for all to see. Her toenails were painted pink, and it was as if they were blooming flowers. They were incredibly alluring. Her hair was silken and raven black, yet her lips were as red as scorching flames. Her nose was straight and tall, and her eyes carried a faint hint of green. She radiated with a wild allure. A lustful expression involuntarily appeared on Tang Yuan's and Zhao Shuang's face when they saw this woman. However, there was more so a sense of apprehension. They didn't dare to stare at her voluptuous breasts and shapely bottom at all, and they were both as well behaved as could be. This was because this seductive and alluring woman was called Yang Shaoling. Her father was a 9th Heaven Celestial King, and she was also a 4th Heaven Celestial King herself. If this was all, these two young masters naturally wouldn't have been so apprehensive of her. However, this woman was a poisonous spider who liked to toy with men. This wasn't normal toying, but toying with them until they were broken, crippled, and dead. Even though Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang enjoyed beautiful women, they only dared to salivate over this woman. They didn't dare to touch her at all. "Sister Ling," they said in unison. In Ghost King City, there were 3 second-generation young masters who clearly enjoyed a superior status. Yang Shaoling was one of them. Yang Shaoling swayed her hips as she walked over. There were 10 bare-chested men following behind her, each of them tall and muscular. There were ribbons of iridescent light around them, ranging from 1 to 2. These were all her gigolos. She had never shied away from letting others know that she had such a hobby and needs. "That brat is your new pet?" Yang Shaoling asked as she sat down. She pointed at Ling Han with her slender finger. "That's right," Tang Yuan replied obediently. Even though Yang Shaoling couldn't kill him, she could indeed give him a good beating. His father wouldn't cause a huge commotion with the Yang clan because of this. Generally speaking, as long as they didn't take things too far, their parents wouldn't interfere with their skirmishes. Yang Shaoling licked her slightly full lips, causing them to become even more lush and reflective. There was a sense of intoxication and unrestrainedness about them. "If this brat obtains the title of Blood Martial King, let me play with him for a few days. It's his honor that Sister Ling has taken a fancy to him," Tang Yuan hurriedly said. Yang Shaoling had already spoken, so even if she broke or killed Ling Han, he still wouldn't dare to make a single peep. "Then let's enjoy the show. Here's hoping that he's more than just his handsome appearance," Yang Shaoling said. Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang exchanged a glance, with both mumbling in their minds. What was the use of being handsome? Men had to be powerful, they had to be influential. These were the fundamentals. In the arena, Ling Han stood 30 meters away from Ebony. This was because the commentator was still babbling away to increase the excitement of the spectators. Shut up. Or else I'll kill you first. Ebony suddenly roared at the commentator. Boom. The spectators weren't frightened by this threat, and they instead became even more fervent with excitement. It was this kind of lawless and audacious person that they needed. They wanted to witness a bloody and brutal battle. The commentator was terrified by Ebony's bloodshot glare. This was a glare flickering with killing intent. He didn't dare to test Ebony's patience. This was because human life was worth nothing in this place. Even celestial kings were treated as nothing. Then let the battle begin, he shouted. Huh, pretty boy, I'll stomp your face into mincemeat and then thrust my demonic saw into your A**s. Ebony said as he retrieved a saw. After activating it, the blades of the saw instantly started to spin at a high speed. Ling Han was astonished. This was because the saw didn't glow with any symbols. However, it still radiated with might. This wasn't a celestial tool. He immediately realized this. Instead, it was a product of the technology realm. It wasn't a celestial tool, yet it could rival the might of a celestial tool. This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. However, what did this matter? With his absolute strength, he could end this battle with a single punch. Die, pretty boy. Ebony roared as he swung his demonic saw. He charged at Ling Han, and with a single step, he already appeared before him. His saw blades spun wildly, emitting an ear-piercing shriek. Chapter 2563, Arrival of Lu Li. Ling Han felt slightly annoyed. He had actually been referred to as a pretty boy. However, this couldn't be helped. He was disguised as Li Long right now, and Li Long was indeed a pretty boy. He was incredibly handsome, to the point that he could almost be called beautiful. In fact, he was even more beautiful than many women. In his annoyance, Ling Han clenched his fists even tighter. He then unleashed a punch. Right now, he had already forged ahead on his own path. His intent realm had reached perfection, and his physique had more so reached the sixth heaven. Thus, this punch carried a boundless might that was almost no weaker than celestial tools. However, Ebony naturally didn't know this. Upon seeing Ling Han dare to face his demonic saw with bare fists alone, he involuntarily sneered. This brat thought that he could underestimate the demonic saw just because it wasn't a celestial tool? Humph. Only he knew that a small amount of divine metal had been added to the demonic saw during its forging process. Thus, it was sharper and sturdier than most other celestial king tools. What did it matter that Ling Han was a celestial king? If he were struck by the demonic saw, he would definitely lose limbs. In fact, he would be sliced into two in an instant. The spectators in the stands were also filled with anticipation and excitement. The battle had just begun, yet they could already witness blood and gore. They were naturally delighted. Even though the battle would conclude in an instant, all they wanted to see was blood and death. Utter fool. Zhao Shuang jeered. His opponent knew that he had a weapon, yet he still chose to rush over head-on. Just how much did he want to die? Tang Yuan was also astonished. He couldn't believe that the world's paramount martial academy had actually produced such a foolish disciple. He had placed a huge wager on Ling Han. If he lost, he wiped the cold sweat from his brows. Even if Ling Han were truly killed by Ebony, he would still whip his corpse for 10,000 years to vent his anger. Yang Shaoling snickered softly. As it turned out, this pretty boy was all looks and no brains. There would be no fun in toying with him. As the spectators screamed and whistled, Ling Han's fist collided with the teeth of the demonic saw. If time were slowed down 10,000-fold, one would clearly see one tooth of the demonic saw shattering as it came into contact with Ling Han's fist. Because this saw was spinning, another tooth immediately whipped over. However, it was also shattered in an instant. If time flowed a bit faster, they would hear an endless stream of crisp clanging sounds. If time flowed as normal, however, everything would be over in a flash. Ling Han's fist slammed over. Pang! The demonic saw was instantly snapped into two, with countless shards shooting into the sky. Some even shot back toward Ebony. Pu. His face, chest, and abdomen were all struck, instantly drawing blood. Ah! Ebony wailed in agony. This was a bone-piercing pain. This punch stunned the entire stadium. There was a deathly silence, and only Ebony's agonized wail continued to reverberate. In the next instant, however, a tidal wave of cheers instantly erupted in the stadium. It was as if the spectators wanted to scream until their throats became sore. Incredible. This was simply incredible. Obliterating the demonic saw with bare hands. How enthralling. Come on. Tang Yuan screamed as he jumped up in excitement. Even though he had invited Ling Han, and even though he had high hopes for Ling Han, he had never actually seen Ling Han in action before. Thus, he hadn't known much about his strength. Now, however, he was clear. He was clear that he had underestimated Ling Han. This brat could definitely become a blood martial king. Moreover, he could even defeat Lu Li's blood martial king, helping him win his face back. Meanwhile, Zhao Shuang muttered in regret. Why hadn't a subordinate of his father been on duty at that time? If that were the case, Ling Han would have become his subordinate and been fighting for him. He would have won countless benefits for him. What an interesting pretty boy, Yang Shaoling remarked as she licked her fiery red lips. There was intoxication in her eyes. Enough with the wailing. Ling Han roared as he charged forward. He naturally wouldn't feel any sympathy for someone like Ebony. Moreover, in a place such as the Celestial King Graveyard, sympathy would also be excessive. Few people deserved forgiveness. He threw another punch. Ebony hurriedly raised an arm to block, yet the shield of regulations and source power on his arm was immediately shattered. His arm was crushed, sending a spray of blood into the air. His bones ripped through his skin, appearing as brutal as could be. Pang! Ling Han's fists didn't stop, striking Ebony's ribs. The magnificent power of his punch reverberated, instantly causing Ebony's body to explode into a cloud of blood and flesh. In an uncanny twist, however, there was no shared grief from heaven and earth. There was no blood rain, either, and it was as if this place had been abandoned by heaven and earth. The spectators faltered for a brief moment before erupting into a tidal wave of cheers. They loved this kind of slaughter. Moreover, this had been an enrapturing punch that had completely obliterated the opponent. However, some people were able to see more. They all observed Ling Han with a profound gaze. To kill a celestial king at the same cultivation level required immense strength. To obliterate their body with a single punch more so required astounding power. This was proof enough that Ling Han was more than just a monarch tier. He was very likely a monarch star. Here, celestial kings were countless in number. Monarch tiers were common, yet monarch stars were much fewer in number. Delightful. Very well. Tang Yuan roared as he jumped up again. He continued to clap, reflecting his immense joy. Not only had he obtained a powerful warrior through this battle, but he had even won a huge sum of money. This double victory naturally filled him with euphoria. Tang Yuan, you've truly struck dumb luck. Zhao Shuang couldn't help but comment. He was feeling incredibly jealous. Tang Yuan wore a smug expression. To second-generation young masters like him, owning a powerful blood martial king would win them a lot of face. After he wins a few more battles, I'll wait for him to serve me in my bed chamber, Yang Shaoling said as she stood up. With a sway of her hips, she left the stadium of death. Seductress. Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang said in their minds. They lusted for this seductive woman, yet they were filled with fear and apprehension at the same time. Even if she were served naked on a platter before them, they still wouldn't dare to touch her. The price to pay would be far too great. "Our victor, Li Long," the commentators shouted, announcing the winner. Even though this seemed a bit extra, how could a corpse achieve victory? Ling Han exited the arena amid boisterous cheers from the audience. He returned to the resting area. After a short while, he saw Tang Yuan running over. "Ha, good job. Very good job." Tang Yuan praised. Come, I've already prepared a feast to celebrate your victory." Sure enough, after returning to the courtyard, Tang Yuan had already ordered people to prepare a feast. Moreover, he had invited many guests. These guests all belonged to the Tang clan's faction, like Luo Yang and so on. Their parents were all subordinates of Tang Mingbo, and they were all followers of Tang Yuan. Many people had been invited, and there were also some female celestial kings. The female celestial kings were all extremely bold, and they continued to make eyes at Ling Han. It was as if they didn't mind participating in a wild adventure with this powerful man. Of course, this would be an adventure with no weapons and death. Ling Han pretended not to notice them. He hadn't come here to muck around with women. "Young Master Tang, Lu Li has come." As the feast progressed, a servant suddenly walked over to report this to Tang Yuan. Everyone instantly fell silent. Silent suspense hung over the courtyard. Lu Li was Tang Yuan's mortal enemy. The two powerful young masters had continued to exchange blows, with both achieving some victories and suffering some defeats. The animosity between them only grew greater and greater. "Why is he come?" Tang Yuan said with a sneer. However, he immediately waved his hand, and said, "Let him enter." "Does he think I'm afraid of him?" Chapter 2564, Crashing the Party. Soon after, the servant brought two people inside. The person in front was filled with a haughty aura, and it was as if he wanted to make sure that everyone knew that he was a second-generation young master. In fact, he seemed just shy of writing "I am super impressive" on his face. The other person kept a much lower profile. His eyes were downcast and solemn, and he looked much like a puppet. When the person in front of him took a step, he would take a step too. Their footsteps were completely in sync. They were both celestial kings, with one having 2 ribbons of iridescent light, and one having 3 ribbons of iridescent light. "Lu Li," Tang Yuan said as he saw the haughty person. He wanted to control his emotions and appear as if he had a grasp of the situation, yet he couldn't help but reveal his resentment. This was because he had suffered a brutal defeat the previous time they had clashed heads. Not only had his blood martial king failed to reach 100 victories, but he had even been killed on the spot. This had caused him to lose an exorbitant amount of money. As a result, he detested Lu Li to the core. "Tang Yuan," Lu Li said with a chuckle. Because he had gained the upper hand in the previous clash, he naturally felt a sense of superiority. He looked at Ling Han and said, "This is the new person you invited?" "He's called Li Long." "And what about it?" Tang Yuan retorted. Lu Li ignored Tang Yuan. Instead, he looked at Ling Han and said, "Become my follower, Li Long." He immediately started to poach the underling of Tang Yuan, continuing, "If you stay with someone like Tang Yuan, you'll only be covering your own luster. Moreover, do you know how your predecessor died?" "He was killed by my blood martial king," he said in a menacing voice. Lu Li's words were threatening and dripping with malice. If Ling Han didn't follow him, Lu Li would subject him to the same fate as his predecessor. Ling Han would die at the hands of Lu Li's blood martial king. Tang Yuan shook with anger. He pointed at Lu Li and bellowed, "Lu Li, you're taking things too far." Lu Li roared with laughter. "You're nothing but a defeated opponent. Obediently stand aside." He turned to Ling Han again, saying, "What do you think? Do you want to die a wretched death, or do you want to bathe in eternal glory?" Everyone glared at him in anger. This person was far too arrogant and haughty. He had come to someone else's territory, and he was even trying to openly threaten and poach their followers. He was treating the Tang faction as if they didn't exist. Ling Han completely ignored him. Instead, he was pondering whether he needed to dispose of another second-generation young master before he left. "You truly disappoint me," Lu Li said with a shake of his head. "I initially thought you were a smart person, but by the looks of it now, you're an utter fool." Tang Yuan finally composed himself, saying, "Lu Li, just you wait. I'll definitely make you swallow your own words." Lu Li huffed in disdain. "Tell your brat to become a blood martial king first. Otherwise, he doesn't even have the right to battle with my underling." Blood martial kings could actively challenge other blood martial kings. However, if one weren't a blood martial king, they could only enjoy this privilege after becoming a blood martial king. "This is an easy task," Tang Yuan said coldly. "Tell your blood martial king to clean his neck. It's only a matter of time before his head hits the deck. Becoming a blood martial king isn't so easy. Call me after you pass this challenge." Lu Li flicked his sleeve and continued, "This kind of feast is so boring and meaningless. What a killjoy. I'm off." He turned around to leave. "You want to leave so easily after entering my territory?" Tang Yuan said in a baleful voice. If he allowed his nemesis to leave so easily, would he still have face to show himself in the future? "What? You want to keep me here?" Lu Li said with a sneer. "Yuan, hold them back." The person who had remained silent this entire time stood still. He then turned around. Clang! A sword appeared in his hand, emitting a crisp clanging sound. The blade of the sword vibrated, exuding an ice-cold killing intent. He was a single person with a single sword, yet he radiated with a domineering aura that could seemingly force everyone to retreat. It was as if no one could breach his defenses as long as he didn't fall. "Kill him," Tang Yuan commanded coldly. He didn't dare to kill Lu Li, but it was naturally no problem to kill one of his lackeys. Even slicing him into pieces would be fine. A young celestial king stepped forward and said, "I'll go." He was also a third heaven celestial king, and his cultivation was far superior to Tang Yuan's. It was just that his father was inferior to Tang Mingbo. Thus, he could only become Tang Yuan's underling. Whoosh! He dashed forward, and a sword had already appeared in his hand. Like a soaring immortal, he ruthlessly thrust at Yuan's throat. "Remember, you've died at the hands of Gua." Pooh! Before he could even finish saying his name, his head had already been sent flying. Blood spurted from his neck. They were at the same cultivation level, yet he had been beheaded in a single exchange. Just how immense was the gulf between them? Most importantly, this Yuan was far too ruthless. The father of the person he had killed was a seventh heaven celestial king. Even though seventh heaven celestial kings couldn't compare to ninth heaven celestial kings, were they beings that third heaven celestial kings could provoke? Yuan retracted his sword. His eyes were frosty and lacking emotion as he gazed at the others. It was as if he were looking at sheep for slaughter instead of living people. Everyone was terrified. This person was far too resolute in his slaughter, not hesitating in the slightest. His aura completely suppressed them. Meanwhile, Ling Han was fairly intrigued as he looked at Yuan. His mind continued to replay the sword strike from just then. In terms of power alone, Yuan hadn't possessed a crushing advantage. However, his strike had been far too quick, so much so that his opponent hadn't been afforded the opportunity to defend. This person was a worthy opponent. "Ha ha ha!" Lu Li roared with wanton laughter. "Tang Yuan, you still want to compete with me? You overestimate yourself. Before my new underling, can your pretty boy even withstand a single strike?" He strode away, with no one daring to block him. Only when Lu Li left did Yuan finally sheath his sword. He turned around to leave step by step. However, his movements were stiff, and it was as if he were a puppet. However, even though his movements were strange, no one dared to laugh. Instead, they all felt a cold chill grip their bodies. Only when Yuan vanished from sight did they finally feel the warmth in the air. His killing intent was far too powerful. In fact, it was so powerful that it could subtly affect them and petrify their divine sense. Thus, even if their strength was similar, they would still suffer resounding defeat at his hands. Trash. You're all trash. Tang Yuan suddenly howled in rage. He swept his gaze across them as he smashed wine glass after wine glass. Lu Li had specially come to ruin his mood. However, even though he knew this, he still couldn't prevent it. Thus, why wouldn't he be enraged? Tang Yuan continued to smash wine glasses and flip tables. He then turned around to leave. How could they continue this feast? Would he be in the mood to do so? After just 4 days, Ling Han was scheduled for his second battle. According to usual practice, one would rest for a month or so after each battle. After all, it was inevitable that one would be wounded during merciless life-and-death battles. In fact, it wouldn't be strange for competitors to rest for half a year. However, Ling Han's first victory had been far too flawless. He hadn't suffered any wounds, nor had he lost any vitality. Add to that Tang Yuan's pent-up anger, and it was only natural that he wanted Ling Han to become a blood martial king as soon as possible. Only then could he challenge Lu Li's blood martial king. Ling Han's next opponent was a veteran of the tournament. He had participated in over 1,000 battles, though his greatest win streak was only 7. However, to remain alive after participating in over 1,000 battles, and to achieve a winning streak of 7, this person clearly possessed admirable battle prowess. However, it was just that no one invested in him anymore. He simply fought in this tournament to make a living and earn some cultivation resources. Indeed, those who participated in the tournament would all be given a battle fee. The amount would be dependent on their strength and popularity. The person immediately greeted Ling Han with squinting eyes and a wide smile upon seeing him, saying, "Young one, show me some mercy." Chapter 2565, Extremely Shameless. The tournament had strict rules against faked battles. Once such cases were discovered, the involved parties would all be executed. Because the owner of this tournament ground was the Azure Ghost Celestial King, who would dare challenge his authority? Previously, there had been a son of a Ninth Heaven Celestial King who had told his subordinate to fight a faked battle for the sake of his gambling stakes, and in the end, this person was directly killed by the Azure Ghost Celestial King, who did not give any face to his old man at all. After this, there was no other profligate young master that dared order their subordinates to fight fake battles. Now, this veteran fighter was asking Ling Han for mercy, but this was not about fighting a fake battle, but rather him hoping that Ling Han could spare his life in the case that he lost. Ling Han smiled calmly. He was not a psychotic murderer, and did not have the hobby of definitely killing his opponents. "No problem. Thank you," the veteran gladiator said, smiling. Looking at the stage. "Hee, Hu Jing is using this trick again. This guy is the most treacherous. He has deceived a great many people into thinking that he was docile and honest, yet in the end, he would suddenly turn around and attack fiercely, their lives taken easily. This pretty boy should have fallen for it as well. Hee, what is the use of great strength? Without being clever enough, he would still be going to his death. It can't be helped. He's a newcomer, and doesn't know that one has to be cruel to survive here. Once you attack, you must definitely show no mercy, or you would merely be courting death." Everyone discussed spiritedly. Those who had watched long enough naturally knew the kind of character this veteran fighter was. "Young man, let me teach you something." Hu Jing acted as if he was going to speak to Ling Han, and when he came close enough, he suddenly attacked furiously. A flash of saber light shot skywards. He was indeed, as everyone had said, extremely treacherous. All the words that he had said previously were merely for the sake of numbing Ling Han, and all of it was just paving the path for this strike. A cold smirk curled up the corners of his lips. Why was it very rare for him to battle on the tournament ground now? That was because this trick would no longer be useful if he used it too often. Thus, it was necessary that he come out again and try this dirty trick after an interval of time, when everyone had more or less forgotten about him. With how treacherous he was, he naturally had already come up with a way out for himself. If Ling Han was truly extremely strong, and even such a sudden sneak attack was not able to wound him, he would retreat immediately. There was a safe passage at the side of the tournament ground. Once he entered into this passage, the tournament battle would be halted. Though Ling Han had not taken this opponent to heart, once the battle had started, he would definitely not be careless. Furthermore, his strength had really surpassed his opponent's by too far. The moment his opponent's saber swiped out towards him, the saber light had not even struck him, and he had already reacted, throwing his fist out in a punch. Pung! Hu Jing felt his hands become numb, and he could not even grip the handle of his saber. He was immediately sent flying. He paled in shock. He had not thought that his opponent's strength was so great that it had far surpassed his imagination. Without the slightest bit of hesitation, he immediately broke into a run, and raced towards the safe passage. With how fast a celestial king was, he had already drawn close to the passage in a single leap, but right at this moment, a gentle voice rang out next to his ear. "What are you running for?" Yet when these words were heard by Hu Jing, this was practically as if a spell was pressing him to death, causing goosebumps to rise up all over his body. However, his feet moved even more forcefully, and he was running even faster than before. Pa! He felt a weight on his shoulder, and he involuntarily stopped. Ah! He roared. A sharp blade suddenly appeared in his hand, and he stabbed it towards Ling Han's ribs. "Brother, don't you think you're a little too out of line?" Ling Han asked, smiling. With a casual swipe of his, this sharp blade instantly fell into his hand. Hu Jing was also smiling, but this smile was extremely forced, and looked even worse than if he were crying. "Brother, don't misunderstand. I was really teaching you something just now. You must definitely keep your guard around certain treacherous villains, who would make use of your kindness." This man's shamelessness was truly unimaginable. Ling Han laughed loudly. "How should I deal with this kind of treacherous villain, then?" Hu Jing's eyeballs spun around madly. He naturally would not say something like he should kill such people, and immediately declared righteously, "You should teach them well. How could they be so shameless?" Ling Han shook his head. "I think it would be better to kill them. End the matter once and for all, and save any future trouble." "Spare me!" Hu Jing screamed. "I have to support elderly and children. If I die, my whole family will be finished." Ling Han was surprised. He already knew that this man was extremely shameless, but he was still shocked by the level he could lower himself to. Shua! Right at this moment, Hu Jing suddenly shot out a leg, a kick directly aimed at the top of Ling Han's head, and there was a cold light flashing at the tip of his shoe. A sharp blade was actually hidden in the sole of his shoe. The kick landed, and Hu Jing felt like the sharp blade under his foot had pierced into bone. He was too familiar with this feeling, and had killed who knew how many people with this same move. He was instantly overjoyed, but he had not managed to break into a smile yet when he suddenly screamed loudly. That was because this strike of his had pierced onto his own palm. As it turned out, Ling Han had grabbed his right hand somehow, and then used it as a shield in front of his own face, making it bear the stab from his shoe. Hu Jing was in pain, but was even more panicked. He had used this series of successive final blows, yet Ling Han had still easily dealt with them. This man's strength was of a level that he could not possibly imagine. He broke out in a cold sweat. Now that things had come so far, even he could not believe that Ling Han would still be willing to spare him. Ling Han smiled, and asked, "Any other tricks?" He was very curious about how many treacherous strikes this guy could think of with his shamelessness. Hu Jing was speechless. Firstly, he had indeed run out of tricks, and secondly, even if he hadn't, faced with Ling Han's absolute strength, even he knew that there was no way they would be effective. No more? This is truly disappointing. Ling Han shook his head, and then raised a fist. Any more last words that you need me to relay to your family? Hu Jing did not have any elders or children. These were just lies he had fabricated. In such dire straits, he also erupted in ferocity, and his right hand that was still free struck towards Ling Han's eyes, countless chains surging out of his body. These were chains of regulations that were manifested by great Tao. He had no hopes that he could kill Ling Han, his only hope was that he would be able to cause the latter some injury. With a casual toss, Ling Han threw Hu Jing out. Pang, his body suddenly exploded in midair, turning into a shower of blood. Naturally, there was no way that this kind of treacherous, shameless villain would garner any mercy from Ling Han. Li Long wins. The commentator announced the results loudly. Everyone was cheering. Both of Ling Han's victories ended with completely destroying his opponent. This had completely satisfied their yearning to see a merciless, cruel spectacle. Yet Ling Han showed no hint of happiness. He killed others not because he enjoyed it, but rather just because he thought that the person in question deserved death. Tang Yuan's mood also lifted slightly. Ling Han claiming 2 absolute victories was naturally as he had expected, but such decisive and clean winning still pleasantly surprised him. Quickly claimed 10 victories. Tang Yuan could not wait to suppress Lu Li. He had suffered too many losses in recent days, and felt like he was about to die from the jeering and mockery of the other profligate young masters that were his equal in status. In the next few days, Ling Han would battle once about every 3 days, and they were all one-sided, crushing victories. Moreover, as long as his opponent did not go too far, he would not deliberately take the lives of others either. 10 days later, Ling Han had already attained 5 consecutive victories. At this point, the subsequent battles would not be so easy. The tournament would deliberately target him, and use all possible means available to them to stop him from becoming a blood martial king. This label was an honor, a recognition of strength, so how could it easily be bestowed? The waiting time this time was slightly longer. 10 days later, Ling Han finally met his 6th opponent. Chapter 2566, The 6th Opponent. The 6th opponent was different. This signified that Ling Han had officially entered into the process of attempting for the title of Blood Martial King. In the Celestial King Graveyard, all cities were strictly controlling the title of Blood Martial King. It would not easily be obtained, which truly turned it into a kind of supreme honor. In this manner, once a Blood Martial King appeared, he would win over full rows of spectators. Thus, the tournament authorities arranged a suitable opponent for Ling Han only after serious selection. Before this, even Tang Yuan had not managed to get wind of the slightest bit of information. He had completely no idea who would be Ling Han's opponent this time round. On the black side, it is a rookie that has just recently emerged in our tournament of death, Li Long. The commentator began to loudly praise. According to the data I have obtained, Li Long is a disciple of the world's paramount martial academy. He has been punished with being exiled here due to killing another disciple. Killing a fellow disciple was an extremely serious crime, but when the commentator's words fell, everyone was cheering in excitement, as if they considered Ling Han a hero. Who among the people here had never committed a crime? Whoever was fiercer and eviler and whoever was crueler would be able to win respect. Though Ling Han's crime was not so heavy to the point that it was intolerable, it still made everyone look highly upon him. This guy had good prospects. And now, Li Long has already won 5 times in a row, and entered the stage to contend for the title of Blood Martial King, and today, this is the first barrier that he will have to face. Can he really defeat his opponent decisively and easily with a single punch like he has the last 5 times? Let us wait and see. The commentator paused slightly, then raised his voice once more, and shouted loudly, and now, let us reveal the identity of the sniper. And that is Sai Ong. Boom, instantly, everyone's emotions exploded. Sai Ong. Sai Ong. Sai Ong. They all called out loudly. At the beginning, it was still chaotic, but very quickly, it became a call of unison, neatly coordinated and like a clap of thunder, bearing extremely astonishing intimidation. It looked like this Siong was quite popular. Let the cheering become even more intense, and bring out our sniper. The commentators seem to have gone mad. On the red side, Siong, a warrior who has once achieved 8 successive wins. Pung! A figure directly leaped in from outside the passage of the tournament ground, landing heavily on the ground, and throwing dust into the air. This was a third heaven celestial king. It was only his first sniping battle, and the tournament authorities had not placed such high importance on Ling Han that they would directly mobilize a fourth heaven celestial king. Siong was a blue-eyed, blonde man, his body extremely sturdy and muscular, his arms and thighs bared. It could be seen that his complexion was very fair, but he was covered with golden poor hairs, giving off the feeling of a gorilla. He was very showy as he showed off his muscles continuously to the spectators. In fact, he even lifted his top, causing the women on the spectators' seats to erupt in a series of shrill screams. After causing a small climax, Siong exclaimed softly. A silvery light rose from his body, and his whole person actually sank into a silver suit of battle armor, instantly becoming a small giant that was 9 meters tall. The tournament allowed the use of battle armor, celestial tools, and other objects as long as there was a gap of just a single cultivation level. Boom, the cheers were about to send the roof flying. Hee, it really is unexpected that the tournament authorities would actually take such serious notice of this brat, sending Siong in his first battle, Zhao Shuang said, smiling slightly. He turned towards Tang Yuan. Do you dare to make another bet? Tang Yuan was also slightly serious. Though this Siong had only attained 8 successive wins, he had achieved 8 wins in a row, as many as over 30 times. This kind of battle merit was extremely amazing, or there would have been no way that he would have such great popularity. Furthermore, Siong himself was a third heaven monarch tier, and added with the help of the battle armor, his battle prowess naturally would be lifted another level. Even some fourth heaven celestial kings would not be a match for him. What is it? Scared? Zhao Shuang taunted. You have so little confidence in your own subordinate? A profligate young master like Tang Yuan naturally could not tolerate this. Immediately, he raised his head high, and declared, what would I be scared of? I'm still betting 3 Brahman celestial flowers. Sure. Zhao Shuang laughed loudly. This was just the opportunity for him to win back the stakes that he had previously lost. Tang Yuan, you had best pray that this brat would be able to keep his life after this. Tang Yuan humphed. It is still undecided who would be killing whom. Let's just wait and see. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Shuang laughed loudly. He felt that he was certainly going to win this time round. On the other side, the commentator said a few words, completely igniting the emotions of the spectators, and then said, and now, let the battle begin. Ha ha ha, brat, have you washed your neck clean? Have you booked your coffin? Siong laughed loudly, showing incredible arrogance. Any other last words you want to leave? I am a very reasonable person. Ling Han smiled slightly, and stretched out his right hand, crooking a finger at Siong. This provocative action immediately drove the people on the spectators' seats mad. A great many people switched to supporting Ling Han, and began calling out, Li Long, Li Long. You dare to snatch my popularity. Siong was infuriated, and with a bounce of his foot, the colossal object that was the battle armor immediately rushed towards Ling Han. Shua, a sword actually appeared in the hand of the battle armor, but it was not an actual object. Instead, it was made up of light. This was called a particle sword, and Ling Han had heard about it from Wally. It was an object of pure energy, possessing frightening destructive power. In this aspect, it was not inferior to any celestial tool. Furthermore, a particle sword was not a solid object, and was not so easily parried. Thus, it was very hard to deal with. Previously, though Yang Zhishuan had also possessed battle armor, he did not have equipment like a particle sword, so it was clearly inferior to this battle armor of Siong. From the very start, Siang was using the battle armor and particle sword, clearly showing that he intended to settle this quickly. Ling Han had no lack of understanding of battle armor. This kind of thing possessed very strong recovery abilities. He could either burst out with power that was strong enough to destroy it completely, or he could only slowly wear it down to the point that the energy of the battle armor was completely exhausted. Otherwise, the side possessing the battle armor would be completely unbeatable. Ling Han naturally would not choose the second option. He balled his hand into a fist, and then also leaped forth, going forward to greet Siang. Pung! Ling Han's speed was even higher, with him arriving first though he had started out later. His fist landed onto the chest portion of the battle armor, and with a wave of his right hand, his strike landed on the left wrist of the battle armor, easily pulling out the particle sword. Siang was shocked. He had not expected that Ling Han could be so fast, and his power was also very amazing. Even if Siang was boosted with the battle armor, it was still no match for the power of a mere wave of Ling Han's hand. However, Siang immediately smirked coldly because this battle armor was not what it had been before. Recently, he had spent an exorbitant sum to upgrade this battle armor. It was no longer a 3-star battle armor, but was rather 4 stars, which could assist a 4th heaven celestial king in battle. He was unable to fully unleash the might of the battle armor, but in terms of defense, it would be very hard for even a peak stage 4th heaven celestial king to pose a threat to the defenses of the battle armor. Naturally, there was no need for him to worry then. This was a secret. He had not told anyone, because he was ambitious, and was not satisfied with just playing the role of a sniper. He wanted to attempt achieving the honor of Blood Martial King. In that way, with every battle he fought, the fees paid for his appearance would be multiplied a good few times over. You want to penetrate my battle armor? You must really be dreaming. Crack, 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 crack. However, before he even finished his thought, he suddenly heard the sound of breaking from his battle armor. It was incredibly sharp to his ears. Boom! The spectators on the seats had gone absolutely crazy. What had they seen? Siang's battle armor had been directly punched through with a single punch from Ling Han. That guy was really too barbaric, directly taking apart a battle armor with bare hands. Gods! Chapter 2567, Extending Row of Successive Victories. This was really too astonishing. Though battle armor was made from a very, very small amount of divine metal, it was still born from a concentrated effort of a technological realm. From a certain aspect, technology was actually also a cultivation technique, as it was also about how to use power. High-tier battle armor was extremely sturdy. Otherwise, if it were to be damaged at the first moment in a battle, what use would it be then? But now? Everyone was gaping widely, watching numbly as Ling Han tore apart the battle armor with his bare hands. That was truly barbaric, violent, and too shocking. Even Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang were rendered speechless. Ling Han truly was an extreme, powerful man. However, only after a while, Tang Yuan laughed loudly, and said, "Zhao Shuang, thank you for your 3 Brahmin celestial flowers. Added together, I have earned 6 of them from you." Zhao Shuang was speechless. The gaze he directed at Ling Han was filled with anger. Why was this guy so strong? Why couldn't he just die obediently? This is only the 6th battle. He regained his composure. Subsequently, the tournament authorities will deploy even more elites. To attain the title of Blood Martial King is as difficult as trying to ascend the heavens. However, Tang Yuan was filled with confidence in Ling Han this time. Zhao Shuang, then we'll just make another wager later. Zhao Shuang did not reply. He was absolutely uncertain about Ling Han's strength at present, nor did he know what kind of elite the tournament authorities would deploy next, so how could he dare to take up this wager so rashly? Furthermore, Brahmin celestial flower was too valuable. By now, he had already lost 6 in succession, and who knew how harshly his old man would be scolding him. How could Zhao Shuang possibly dare to be rash again? However, he was sure that the tournament authorities would definitely mobilize a true elite in the 10th battle to stop Ling Han from becoming a blood martial king. Zhao Shuang would bet on the 10th battle, and win everything he had lost back in one stroke. In fact, he was determined to win a much greater amount than that. In the arena, as Ling Han ripped and tore the armor apart, Xiang appeared in front of him, his expression filled with terror. He was like a completely helpless beauty that had encountered a pervert. He could only shriek shrilly and panic. His whole body was shaking, and even the blonde hair on his skin seemed to be dancing. Ling Han smiled faintly. "What were you saying just now? I didn't hear very clearly, so please repeat." How could Xiang dare to repeat his words? He was far more shocked than any other. Firstly, he was directly involved, and it was he that was facing the immediate danger of death. Secondly, only he knew that his battle armor had truly been upgraded, and far surpassed the level of third heaven. Ling Han was a monster. Why was it he, Xiang, that came to fight him? Hee, I was joking around. Brother, don't take it seriously. Xiang forced out a smile. Ling Han laughed loudly, and patted Xiang's shoulder. Then I am just playing around with you as well. Pa, with a strike of his palm, Xiang was directly split apart with a pang. His legs, arms, and head were all removed, as if he had been torn apart by 5 horses. 1. However, how could a celestial king die so easily? In fact, as long as Ling Han did not continue his attack, Xiang could just piece his body back again, and not even a serious injury would be left behind. Brother, as long as you are happy. Xiang still had to force a grin. He did not beg for mercy. That was because forfeiting was useless in the tournament grounds. If he wanted to live, he could only run to the safety passage by himself. Ling Han cracked a grin. Sure then. He delivered another palm strike. Peng, Xiang's body had been completely turned into a mist of blood. I've used too much force, Ling Han mumbled. Naturally, he would not take it to heart. His opponent had aimed to kill him from the very beginning, and there was no need to have mercy on this kind of character. Li Long wins, the commentator announced loudly. Li Long. Li Long. Li Long. Everyone was shouting Ling Han's alias, excited and exhilarated. Though Ling Han knew that these people were actually very sick, and very psychotic as well, to have over 10,000 celestial kings cheering in such mania and frenzy for him still caused some ripple in his emotions as he was influenced by their mood. No wonder the people here were so crazy. If one battled here for too long, probably even the most normal person would be driven mad, right? Ling Han immediately strengthened his resolve. The purpose he had come to battle here was for the sake of greater strength, and not for bloodshed, nor to satisfy some inner vanity of his or the expectations of others. He left the tournament ground. Tang Yuan personally came to greet him, unlike previously, when he would just leave by himself, and only host a celebration for him when they were back at the courtyard. The victory of the 6th battle had extraordinary significance. Ling Han still submitted. He naturally would not take this seriously. Tang Yuan was the type to mercilessly become hostile. Now, it was only because Ling Han still had value for him to exploit that he was willing to coax him, but as long as there was a conflict with his interests, he would definitely abandon Ling Han without any hesitation. Tang Yuan was slightly restless. He had taken too many losses from Lu Li, and was determined to get his own back. Ling Han was his ray of hope. With this kind of prerequisite, he did not mind giving Ling Han the highest level of treatment. This caused those lackeys of his to be extremely jealous, and the gazes they directed at Ling Han were extremely unfriendly. However, Ling Han's royal favor was presently strong. They did not dare do anything against Ling Han. In fact, some people even called Ling Han Brother Long. Tang Yuan was hurrying things along, wanting to arrange the 7th battle as quickly as possible. However, the tournament was the territory of the Azure Ghost Celestial King. He could exert some pressure, but if he actually wanted to call the shots, he had to be dreaming. Half a month later, the opponent for the 7th battle was finally confirmed. This time, Tang Yuan was informed in advance. The opponent's name was Li He. Li He. After hearing this name, Tang Yuan became serious again. He had a considerable amount of intel in his possession, and he could find out about all kinds of information about Li He just by flipping through it. This man had once obtained 9 successive wins in the tournament, and he himself was a 4th heaven celestial king, being much stronger than Siong had been. No worries. Li Long has battle prowess on the level of the blood martial king. Even if he has a disadvantage of a cultivation level, he would still definitely win. Tang Yuan boosted his own confidence. The next day, the 2nd battle began. When the commentator had introduced the fighters on both sides, all the spectators began to support Li He all over again. After all, Ling Han had only shown his outstanding ability, but Li He was a veteran here. He had gone through hundreds of battles and still survived. In itself, this was a kind of display of strength. Li He was a middle-aged man with a thin build, for streaks of peculiar light wrapped around him. Both of his arms were extremely dried up and thin, and dark as well, as if they were wooden logs that had been charred black. But as they moved, cold light reflected off of them like they were metallic. Ling Han saw very clearly that the man's palms and wrists were covered with seals. They were actually very vague, but they could not deceive his eyes. If you don't want to die, then crawl through here, and get lost. Li He demanded. He spread open his legs, and pointed between his legs with a finger. His meaning could not be clearer. Faked battles were definitely forbidden in the tournament grounds. It was absolutely forbidden to forfeit without even a battle. Even if one escaped from this battle arena, they would still be apprehended by the tournament authorities and executed. Li He was only humiliating Ling Han. Hearing these words, the people on the spectators' seats were greatly excited, screaming shrilly. Ling Han looked around. Were these people really celestial kings? Why was it that there was no difference between them and ordinary people at the marketplace? Was the influence of surroundings really so strong? Brat, I am talking to you, and you actually dare to act as if you haven't heard me? Li He uttered coldly. Do you know how the last person who angered me died? Ling Han smiled slightly. How? Chapter 2568, Suffering the Consequences of His Own Actions. Very terribly. Li He revealed a grin filled with cruelty. With a wave of his right hand, a green snake immediately slithered out of his sleeve. Then, it was a centipede, followed by a scorpion. They were all close together, and all of them were venomous creatures. Soon, you will be slowly devoured bit by these precious pets of mine, Li He said. The flesh and blood of a celestial king are very nutritious, and will help these precious pets grow even faster. Freak. Ling Han nodded. He had not encountered anyone who was normal here. Then, he should just kill him. There was really nothing much he wanted to say to this kind of person that played around with poisonous creatures. With a flick of his finger, a flash of sword chi swept out. Pooh, the green snake was instantly beheaded by the sword chi. If it had only lost its head, the green snake would not die, but this flash of sword chi from Ling Han contained his martial intent as well. To the green snake, this was a deadly disaster, immediately crushing its mind. Mind destroyed, physical body crushed. That definitely meant death. Little Qing. Little Qing. Li He looked as if it was his son that had died, and immediately cried out in grief. He was even really close to tearing up. After howling for a while, he raised his head, his eyes filled with viciousness. You actually dare to kill my precious, I will give you a tragic end. Ling Han smiled faintly. You speak as if you were originally very kind. You will not die too easily. Li He charged over. As he stretched out both arms, his thin, wood-like hands suddenly glowed, and actually turned golden. It was like they were two tiny suns, so bright that it was blinding, and no one could look directly at them. Li He smirked coldly. This was a secret technique that he had cultivated. The regulations of metal were contained in the light, which could wound the eyes and injure the divine sense of his opponent. Anyone who did not know his background would very easily fall for this. Next, he had another successive move, and it was guaranteed that he would be able to easily take down his opponent. By then, he would not easily allow Ling Han to die, but would rather have those precious pets of his slowly devour Ling Han alive. Hearing the latter's pained screams would cause him great excitement and exhilaration. He was smirking coldly, yet suddenly saw an iron fist was flying towards him. What's going on? He was stunned, and finally reacted. This was a counterattack from Ling Han. How was this possible? Being affected by his secret technique, Ling Han was actually still able to throw out a punch so accurately. However, this thought had just formed when pang! His face immediately sustained a heavy punch. Frightening power instantly reverberated throughout his body. There was also an indescribable streak of martial intent, which made him feel as if he was facing a noble and proud ninth heaven celestial king. This was not because Ling Han's cultivation level was too high, but rather because the Tao he cultivated was too majestic. He was clearly just in third heaven, but actually gave off the pressure that should be accorded to a ninth heaven celestial king. Pang! Then, Li He landed heavily on the ground, and felt as if every single bone in his body had been crushed into dust. He could not even muster up the slightest bit of strength. Ling Han appeared above him, looking down on him from above with a calm expression. There was not the slightest hint of pride on his face, as if defeating Li He was something that could not be any more normal. The gap in strength was really too wide. How could there be such a freakish person in this world? Ling Han smiled slightly. I have always been a very fair person. However you wanted to treat me, I will return the same treatment. Li He faltered at first, and then realization suddenly dawned on him. To his terror, he discovered that the eyes of those precious pets of his were shining viciously as they stared fixatedly at him. To be more exact, they were looking at his flesh and blood. This was the flesh and blood of a celestial king. To them, those were very nutritious. No, he had just spoken when a poisonous scorpion had already hopped onto his face. Its two pincers gripped his tongue, and it severed his tongue with a scissoring motion, and crawled into his mouth. With it leading the way, even more poisonous creatures crawled into his body through his mouth. Ugh! Li He released a muffled groan, his face instantly twitching. Not only were these poisonous creatures devouring him alive, they themselves also carried powerful poison, causing him tremendous agony. Initially, this was the agony that he would watch his defeated opponents suffer, while he himself laughed loudly by the sidelines. However, after he traded places with his victims, he finally knew just how cruel this was. He swore that he would definitely kill all the venomous creatures if he could survive this. Eat him! Eat him! Eat him! Yet, the spectators had all erupted. Actually, they did not care whom these venomous creatures would be eating. It was fine as long as the spectacle was bloody and gory enough. Li He was both furious and terrified. These spectators had always cheered for him, but now they were actually cheering on those poisonous creatures, telling them to eat him faster, which was something he could not accept. However, he was even more terrified because he really would be devoured alive by these poisonous creatures. From then, he would no longer exist in this world. However, with the numbing effects of the poison, he could not release any sound at all. But his consciousness was extraordinarily alert, and he could feel every single detail of the agony. This almost drove him mad. All the bones in his body had already been broken, but his body was actually still shivering, and his skin was still twitching, which showed just how great the agony that he was presently suffering was. Ling Han waved a hand. Li He was immediately destroyed, and those poisonous creatures were also crushed. Just the look of them was disgusting. No! On the spectators' seats, a great many people shouted. Why did he have to kill Li He so quickly? He should have allowed him to be eaten alive completely. Only that would be fun enough. These people turned around and jeered at Ling Han, wanting nothing more than to release another swarm of poisonous creatures to deck our Ling Han, compensating for their disappointment. Ling Han swept his gaze coldly over these people. The more he came into contact with them, the more he understood that the people here had all lost their minds. There was absolutely no need to have any kind of sympathy for them. One dying meant one better. If any single one of them escaped, just how astonishing could the damage caused by a celestial king be? After the commentator announced Ling Han's victory, Ling Han left the battle zone and went to the lobby backstage. This time, Tang Yuan did not come to see him. After all, he considered himself the master here. He could occasionally reward his subordinate, but how could he constantly humble himself to that level? What if it caused his subordinate to gain a puffed-up opinion of themselves, and they did not even take him, the master, seriously anymore? He made quick arrangements. Once Ling Han achieved another 3 wins, he could be crowned as the Blood Martial King, and challenge the Blood Martial King that belonged to Lu Li. Day after day passed. This time, the time taken was even longer. Over a month later, the opponent for the 8th match was confirmed. Sima Qing. Sima Qing. When Tang Yuan had hold of the data about the opponent, he was surprised. That was because this Sima Qing was actually about equal in strength to Li He. They were both 4th Heaven Celestial Kings, and had also previously gained 9 successive wins in a row. If there was any difference, it was that Sima Qing had attained 9 successive wins more times than Li He had, but that was only just 2 times more than the latter. Li He couldn't even survive a single exchange with Ling Han. Then even if Sima Qing was slightly stronger than Ling Han, so what? Just how many strikes from Ling Han could be blocked? This was practically gifting another victory straight to Ling Han. Could it be that the tournament authorities have deliberately given some leeway for the sake of father? Tang Yuan stroked his chin. However, Li Long is indeed very strong. Throwing the match in this way is actually not too wrong either. The next day, Ling Han's 8th match began. As expected, when the commentator had finished his introductions of the information of both sides, the spectators erupted in booing and jeers. Wasn't this just deliberately throwing the match? Fake battle. Fake battle. Fake battle, everyone was shouting loudly. Anyone who dared to fight a faked battle should be executed. Chapter 2569, Halberd of 10,000 Ghouls. Yet Sima Qing was completely unmoved. He was a 4th Heaven Celestial King of medium build and average features. However, a Celestial King naturally would have the demeanor of a Celestial King, exuding astonishing pressure. Ascending origin tiers would be crushed even if they just came close to him. The battle begins. This time, the commentator did not dare to keep the audience hanging too long, and hurriedly announced the start of the battle. With a wave of Sima Qing's hands, a majestic light instantly shot into the skies, and a halberd appeared in his hands. The halberd was jet black, but the tip of the halberd was crimson, with black chi rising from it. It was like one could hear the shrill screaming of 10,000 ghosts coming from it. Even if there was a protective formation around the battle area, preventing the shock waves of battle from rushing out of the allocated area, everyone still couldn't help but pale. Not even the formation could fully block this sharp shrieking. Celestial tool, they exclaimed. Heavens, I have actually seen a celestial tool. This is the halberd of 10,000 ghouls that Lord Azure Ghost has once used. I take back what I said. There is absolutely no such thing as throwing the match. There is definitely no throwing the match. Having a celestial tool suppress him, are they trying to make it so that Li Long can't even get 8 wins in a row? Everyone exclaimed in shock. A considerable number of people could tell that the halberd in Sima Qing's hands was a celestial tool. Furthermore, it was a supreme precious tool that had once been used by the Azure Ghost Celestial King at that. Limited by his strength, there was no way that Sima Qing could release the strongest might of the celestial tool, but its power would still be at the 5th heaven at least, right? Was that still not enough to suppress Ling Han? Throwing the match? Fuck throwing the match. Zhao Shuang also lamented in regret. When he found out that Ling Han's eighth opponent was Sima Qing, he also shared Tang Yuan's opinion, and thought that the tournament authorities were planning to throw the match. Thus, he decisively refused to make a wager with Tang Yuan. That would purely be gifting money straight to the latter. Who knew that there would be such a turn of events? He should have made the wager. Meanwhile, Tang Yuan's expression was livid. This was a celestial Tula weapon that a ninth heaven celestial king had once used at that. Its might would definitely be extremely frightening. Was there any need to go so far? For better or worse, Tang Yuan was a character, so why didn't they give him the slightest face at all? This time, Ling Han was definitely in a dilemma. Tang Yuan felt resentment. Even though he had won against Zhao Shuang twice, and had even taken the pay for Ling Han's appearance for himself, what he had spent on Ling Han was even more than that. Did you think that there was no need to pass out bribes to mess around with the arrangements of the tournament so that Ling Han could appear in advance? Tang Yuan hadn't even recovered his capital. If Ling Han were to die now, it would definitely be a great loss for him. Damn it, he mumbled. In the arena, Sima Qing pointed the halberd at Ling Han directly, and said, "Your mistake is that you are showing off too much, and have exhibited your full strength too early. Otherwise, it would not be difficult for someone of your strength to become a blood martial king." Ling Han broke into a grin. "Oh, do you think that I have already shown my full strength?" He looked at the halberd in his opponent's grip, his heart burning like fire. This was a celestial tool. If he could take it for his own, and let the divine demon's sword devour it, the level of the divine demon's sword would definitely be able to advance another step ahead. Divine metal was rare and limited, and had to be accumulated piece by piece. Humph, even if you have still hidden your strength, under the suppression of the celestial tool, everything is meaningless, Sima Qing declared disdainfully. He was not underestimating Ling Han, but rather had too much confidence in this halberd of 10,000 ghouls. This was a precious tool that had once been used by a ninth heaven celestial king, so how could it not be awesome? Come. Ling Han crooked a finger at his opponent. So what if it was a celestial tool? It would still depend on who the user was. How foolish. Sima Qing humphed. He strode towards Ling Han, but his pace wasn't very fast. With every step he took, the celestial tool was awakening, imposing great pressure on Ling Han. This was deliberate. He wanted to make Ling Han shudder in fear because he knew that he was no match for Ling Han in a fair battle. Being able to bully an elite like Ling Han like this, he felt extremely pleased with himself. Ling Han's expression was solemn. Though he had pushed the indestructible heaven scroll to the 6th layer of the indestructible celestial king physique, it was still no match for divine metal. If he confronted divine metal head-on, he would definitely be experiencing a loss. However, the divine demon sword was one of his trump cards, and he did not want to reveal it so quickly. Just in time, he wanted to try fighting in such dire conditions. This should be able to greatly improve his battle prowess. Pung! 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 Sima Qing was getting closer and closer. The seals on the halberd of 10,000 ghouls lit up one after another. Skulls appeared, floating towards Ling Han, and opening their mouths to bite at him. Ling Han balled his hand into a fist and threw a punch. Peng! A skull was immediately crushed. However, he, too, shuddered slightly. This skull contained great power enough to affect him. Furthermore, this was just a single skull. More skulls were appearing, and launching an offensive against Ling Han. Ha ha ha, in front of the halberd of 10,000 ghouls, how much are you worth? Sima Qing brandished the halberd and attacked. Though these skulls could pose a threat to Ling Han, it was still necessary to attack directly with the celestial tool in order to truly defeat, or even kill, Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and grabbed a streak of great Tao, which he smashed towards Sima Qing. This was completely unreasonable as he was directly using brute force to suppress his opponent. But Sima Qing knew that there was a very wide gap in strength between him and Ling Han. If he traded injury for injury with Ling Han, then even if the halberd of 10,000 ghouls could kill Ling Han, Sima Qing would definitely die as well after sustaining a strike from Ling Han. Hence, he had to parry. He brandished the halberd of 10,000 ghouls to meet the attack. Boom, the celestial tool clashed with Great Tao, causing a burst of ripples through space. Sima Qing felt like even his arms were trembling, and if it was not for the fact that the halberd of 10,000 ghouls had already activated, dispersing the majority of power behind Ling Han's attack, this clash would definitely be many times even more frightening, which caused a chill to come over his heart. Just how strong was this man exactly? However, now that things had reached this point, it was apparent that Sima Qing could no longer retreat. Otherwise, even if Ling Han was willing to spare him, Sima Qing would still be called to account by the tournament authorities. Oh, we've already even given you a celestial tool, and you actually still shamefully surrendered and begged for mercy? Die, he roared ferociously, the power of a celestial king surging. Sharp green blades appeared from the halberd of 10,000 ghouls one after another. This was him having inserted his own power inside the celestial tool, further boosting its might. Otherwise, he did not think that his own power could actually pose any threat to Ling Han. Whom can you kill? Ling Han smirked coldly. He unfurled his Tao, an action very smooth and incredibly natural. Even if Sima Qing had a celestial tool in hand, he still appeared really backed up. It was not that the halberd of 10,000 ghouls was not strong, but rather that Sima Qing was too weak. He was unable to fully unleash the might of the celestial tool. So strange. Li Long is clearly only a third heaven celestial king, but why do I have the feeling that he seems like a supreme celestial king of ninth heaven? I have that kind of feeling too. Ah, so do I. Everyone on the spectators' seats was crying out in shock. They were indeed insane, but they were all genuine celestial kings. Which of them was an ordinary character? Cultivation level cannot be faked. Then there is only one possibility. This brat has comprehended his own Tao. Extraordinary genius. He is truly an extraordinary genius. Sima Qing went all out, but the gap in power was too wide. Even if he exerted even more effort, it was useless. He was very soon suppressed. Ling Han used various kinds of regulations proficiently, bringing extreme suffering to Sima Qing. If it were not for the fact that the celestial tool in his grip was capable of slicing apart all types of regulations, Sima Qing would not have been able to block Ling Han's strikes at all. Yet the only question now was just how long he would be able to hold on for. Turning the situation around? That was absolutely impossible, unless the halberd of 10,000 ghouls could activate fully, but that surely was unrealistic. Sima Qing did not dare continue fighting. He began retreating. Now that the battle had come this far, it was enough to prove that he had done his best, and the possibility that he had gone easy on Ling Han did not exist. Furthermore, he was sure that he would be killed by Ling Han if the battle continued. He fled, but Ling Han had already entered into an optimal stage. Regulations manifested into chains, which wrapped around Sima Qing tightly and securely. Chapter 2570, Niu Er. After several hundred exchanges, Sima Qing collapsed helplessly. He wanted to flee, but did not succeed. At present, Ling Han had already formed his own path. In terms of intent realm, he had attained a height that was higher than even that of a considerable number of ninth heaven celestial kings. As long as they were weaker than him in strength, there was no way anyone could escape from him. The halberd of 10,000 ghouls lay silently on the ground. Even if it was not in an awakened state presently, it still gave off a frightening amount of pressure. Ling Han wanted to pick it up, but his hand hadn't even touched it when the halberd of 10,000 ghouls lit up by itself. Seals flickered, exuding the divine might that belonged to the ninth heaven. Without anyone wielding it, the halberd of 10,000 ghouls had become even more terrifying instead. Ling Han sighed. With his present strength, it was still not enough to refine ninth heaven celestial tools. Otherwise, if he tried to force it, it would not be the divine demon sword refining the halberd of 10,000 ghouls, but rather he would be obliterated by the halberd of 10,000 ghouls. Too bad, it was rare to find a celestial tool. Ling Han felt very depressed, and this was apparent in his expression. Fuck, after winning such a difficult battle, he actually had that kind of expression? Everyone was discussing spiritedly, beginning to talk about Ling Han's next opponent. Who exactly was there that would be able to stop Ling Han from becoming a new blood martial king? This battle was really too glorious. Even Tang Yuan was extremely excited. He once again hosted a celebratory banquet for Ling Han. Subsequently, as long as Ling Han won 2 more times, he would be able to become a blood martial king. Very soon, Tang Yuan would be able to seek Lu Li out for revenge. Just the thought of it made him excited. The 9th match came even later. After a whole 3 months, Ling Han's opponent was finally confirmed. Then, the tournament advertised it far and wide, attracting countless people. Even a single ticket was hard to come by, and this was clear proof of how much attention this match had garnered. However, no one revealed who this new opponent of Ling Han would be. Even Tang Yuan had not been able to find out. It could only be revealed when the time came. With Tang Yuan leading, the group arrived at the tournament ground. As an exception, Tang Yuan went first to the lobby backstage, cheering Ling Han on. He was filled with anticipation that he would see another great victory later. When the time had come, Tang Yuan was requested to leave. Even he, a spoiled young master, would not dare to interrupt the progress of the tournament. Ling Han went up the stage, waiting quietly for his opponent to appear. As usual, the commentator made introductions for Ling Han, spit flying everywhere in his excitement. Everyone gave him face by cheering excitedly, but very soon, after the thrill had passed, they all began to anticipate the appearance of Ling Han's opponent. Who was this opponent? Everyone really wanted to know. And now, everyone must very much anticipate Li Long's opponent, right? The commentator paused, and looked here and there. When he saw that everyone bore expressions of impatience, he finally revealed the answer. Perhaps, everyone has already guessed, it is a blood martial king. This was indeed as everyone had expected, but they still cheered. Furthermore, their anticipation increased even further. Just who exactly would this blood martial king be? And he is Niu Er. This was a very funny name one, but not only did everyone not laugh, they erupted into booming cheers instead. Niu Er, the prodigy of the Herculean Iron Bull race. Over 1,000,000 years ago, he has already become a blood martial king, and now has already attained 32 wins. The commentator was also speaking earnestly, and listed out Niu Er's victorious records. These naturally were the battles that he had gone through after becoming a blood martial king. 32 wins was not a great number, and he had only obtained such an achievement in over 1,000,000 years, which made it seem like his battle prowess was nothing impressive. But this was not the case. These victories were pure victories. It meant that his chance of victory against other blood martial kings was more than 50%. More importantly, he enjoyed a battle without any reservations at all. Thus, it was very rare that he would be fighting in the tournament grounds. Otherwise, his victories would far surpass this number. This time, the tournament authorities had also paid a very great price to get him to come back, snipe Ling Han, and prevent him from reaching the top. Now let us, with the most intense applause, welcome our blood martial king warrior, Niu Er. Hua, the cheering was world-shaking. Most of the spectators here were celestial kings, and they were roaring and howling loudly at the same time. This scene was incredibly grand. Niu Er appeared. Ling Han looked over, and couldn't help but wear a strange expression. His opponent was a man of incredibly sturdy build. He was 3 meters tall, but only his body was human-like. He had the head of a bull, and his hands were also the hooves of a bull, while a long bull's tail grew from his behind. He was completely jet black all over. The difference was that there was only a single bull's horn growing from his head, and not 2. Just as the commentator had previously introduced, this was not a member of the human race, but a foreign race. It was just that he had now assumed humanoid form. Niu Er strode forwards, a great hatchet in his grip. This was not a celestial tool, but was rather something forged from pseudo-divine metal. It was adequate in sharpness and sturdiness, allowing him to consecutively battle for several hundred years before he would need to repair it. Scram! Niu Er raised his blade, and pointed it at the commentator. Or I will slaughter you. The commentator did not even dare to speak, and immediately shut up obediently. So you are the man that recent gossip has been spreading around so much about? Niu Er withdrew the blade, and looked towards Ling Han, his eyes fierce and harsh. However, you are far from being as tall and ferocious as I have imagined. Meanwhile, Ling Han was looking Niu Er up and down, his gaze blazing. Brat, what are you looking at me like that for? Niu Er asked, displeased. Chapter 2571, 9 Successive Wins. Ling Han grabbed a streak of Great Tao, and pressed it against Niu Er. Boom! The two of them clashed. Niu Er's saber was very fast, and very sharp as well, but Ling Han's physique was not weak either. The indestructible Celestial King physique had already reached the 6th level, and could be undamaged even when clashing head-on against a great saber that was a pseudo-celestial tool. On the contrary, the resulting impact had caused a great many tiny cracks to appear on that great saber. However, since he could be invited to snipe Ling Han, Niu Er's strength was indeed powerful. He was a 4th heaven celestial king and a monarch tier at that. His vitality index surpassed 9,000 points, and his battle prowess was extremely amazing. Even Ling Han had no choice but to become slightly more vigilant, now feeling slightly intrigued. But with how strong Ling Han's physique was, it did not matter however Niu Er blasted him. With Ling Han's body being as strong as 6th heaven celestial king tier, how could Niu Er actually inflict any injury on him? On the spectators' seats, everyone released a tsunami wave of shouting, but it only consisted of only a single word, kill. Whether it was Ling Han who killed Niu Er, or Niu Er who killed Ling Han, they did not care. As long as they could witness an exciting battle which would end with the death of either side, that was good enough for them. Too bad, too bad. Zhao Shuang shook his head continuously. I actually did not manage to grab such a good opportunity. Sigh, looks like there won't be a next time. He, too, had not expected that the tournament authorities would actually be so harsh. Not only had a blood martial king been deployed, it was one whose wins were in the positive, and an elite like Niu Er at that. Meanwhile, Tang Yuan's expression was dark. He had a lot of confidence in Ling Han, but Niu Er was too strong, and even Tang Yuan did not dare say lightly that Ling Han could win. He was even more confused. Hadn't the tournament authorities gone too far? Just to snipe Ling Han and prevent him from becoming a blood martial king, they had actually sent out an elite like Niu Er? Even if the title of Blood Martial King was a great glory, Ling Han had also proven his strength through the last few battles. Could it be that it was Luli playing tricks behind the scenes? Then this guy would definitely have paid an exorbitant price because merely the payment for Niu Er to appear alone would be astonishingly high, what more when he would have to influence the tournament authorities. He did not understand, but he could only cheer Ling Han on secretly, hoping that Ling Han would be able to win. In the arena. With a paw, the great saber in Niu Er's hands suddenly shattered. This pseudo-celestial tool could have initially been used for several hundred years before needing maintenance, but the power of Ling Han's fists was too domineering. He had forcefully destroyed this saber. Sponsored by Puppies Viral. See more. It should be known that Ling Han was capable of tearing apart battle armor that was his equal in cultivation level or even a level higher with his bare hands, so what did blasting apart a pseudo-celestial tool count as? Human bastard, I have really underestimated you. Niu Er did not panic. Instead, his body shuddered, and his single horn began to glow. It actually stimulated Great Tao, which turned into endless ripples. Ling Han appeared slightly surprised. The feeling that this single horn gave him was even more intimidating than that pseudo-celestial tool from before. This Niu Er was a member of the Herculean Iron Bull race. This should be the natural talent of his race, allowing him to possess battle prowess superior to his cultivation level. Niu Er lowered his head slightly, aimed straight at Ling Han, and charged towards him. His speed was exceedingly high. He practically appeared in front of Ling Han the moment his feet moved, his single horn charging harshly towards Ling Han. Niu Er's mouth bared a proud grin. Once his native natural talent was activated, his soul horn would become as hard and sharp as divine metal, strong enough to pierce through Ling Han's body and stab right through him. He suddenly discovered something was off. Though he could not see, because he had his head lowered, divine sense was like mental tentacles, allowing him to see that a large hand was steadily and strongly holding his single horn. He couldn't move any further. Niu Er pushed forwards with all his might, yet Ling Han could not be moved at all, his power far superior. He was just a third heaven celestial king, so how could he possibly have such frightening power? Idiotic human brat, do you think that this is the full ability of our Herculean Iron Bull race? Niu Er smirked coldly. Though his race was called the Herculean Iron Bull race, great strength and strong defense were definitely not all the unique traits of their race. In truth, their strongest native ability was not apparent from their name. Wang, the single horn suddenly shot out a ray of light, which surged towards Ling Han. This was a death ray. If one was struck by it, even a ninth heaven celestial king could possibly be killed. Ling Han gave a loud shout, frightening power suddenly bursting from his right hand. Peng, a gush of fresh blood sprayed out, and Niu Er's single horn actually was pulled out by force. That death ray shot slightly off course. Sponsored by Puppies Viral. See more. Ah! Niu Er screamed in pain. The single horn was the strongest weapon of his race. At the same time, it was also the fountain of power for them. Now that he had lost his bull's horn, his strength instantly dropped to rock bottom. Ling Han followed up with another punch. Peng, Niu Er's mind was instantly punched through, and he collapsed loudly onto the ground, turning back into his original form. He was a massive black bull, his skin as hard as iron. Ling Han moved quickly, and stowed the corpse of this great bull into the spatial celestial tool. This was a celestial king tier ingredient, so how could he allow it to go to waste? On the spectators' seats, everyone sucked in a sharp breath. This action of Ling Han was really too well practiced. Kill, stow the body, and he also had to carefully avoid destroying Niu Er completely. Could it be that it was really as Ling Han had said previously, that he would fry Niu Er with onions or barbecue him? It was hard to imagine that such a mighty, fierce guy was actually a glutton. Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at the single horn in his hand. He could sense that this horn contained great power, and perhaps it could be of use to him. Inconceivable. Inconceivable. Niu Er has actually lost to Li Long Heavens. He has already achieved 9 successive wins. Who else is there that would be able to stop him from becoming the next blood martial king? The commentator exclaimed in amazement, spit flying everywhere. Meanwhile, Zhao Shuang sighed secretly. Previously, he had still been feeling resentment that he had not gambled with Tang Yuan, but now he felt very lucky and happy that he had not. Otherwise, he would have been losing very terribly again. He did not want to gamble on Ling Han ever again. Even if he were to place any bets, that would be betting that Ling Han could win. The spectators were all cheering and shouting. Though Ling Han had not obliterated Niu Er, and the scene was not too bloody, they had still watched an exciting battle. More importantly, Niu Er had still died in the end, and that was worth it. The 9th battle had ended, and Ling Han returned to Tang Yuan's courtyard, again beginning a low-key life. He needed some time to accumulate the results of his battles in those recent days. He also had to study that bull's horn closely, and see if it could be used in alchemy. It contained astonishing power, which was not inferior to that of celestial king tier great herbs at all. One more win, and this ascending dragon pill is yours. Tang Yuan took out a pill bottle, waving it in front of Ling Han, as if he was deliberately trying to tempt him. Naturally, Ling Han had absolutely no interest in the ascending dragon pill. He only wanted to analyze the composition of this kind of alchemical pill to see how it was capable of increasing the chances of a celestial king breaking through to the next cultivation level. He did not reply, as per usual. Tang Yuan seemed to have become used to Ling Han's attitude, and did not think that he was being rebellious. As long as Ling Han could continue to win, he was willing to accept this kind of bad temper from Ling Han. And the upcoming 10th match was the most crucial. As long as Ling Han could win again, he could then become a blood martial king, and possess the right to challenge Lu Li's blood martial king. Tang Yuan used the power at his disposal to exert influence on the tournament authorities, attempting to make the sniper for the 10th match slightly easier to deal with. Another 3 months later, Ling Han's 10th opponent was finally confirmed. This time, there were naturally countless spectators, and even Yang Xiaoling, the poisonous spider, had appeared. She sat beside Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang, causing the two of them to fall silent in fear. She set her eyes on Ling Han, her gaze burning. She needed Ling Han to win because she would only do blood martial kings. Chapter 2572, Drastic Change. Tang Yuan couldn't help but ask, "Big Sister Ling, do you know who Li Long's opponent is?" Yang Xiaoling was ranked in the top 3 of all the spoiled young masters and misses. Information he was unable to investigate might not necessarily be something unknown to Yang Xiaoling. He was really too curious, and couldn't help but ask her. "Don't worry. It's just a minor character," Yang Xiaoling murmured through her red lips. "N?" Both Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang were surprised. The 9th opponent was a frightening opponent like Niu Er, and the 10th was actually just a minor character? That can't be, right? Yang Xiaoling smiled faintly and said, "That brat has already proven his own strength. Furthermore, I have also deliberately asked for him to be taken care of. How could it be that they would not be willing to give me face for just a little favor like this?" Realization dawned on Tang Yuan and Zhao Shuang. If Ling Han was just any ordinary character, the tournament authorities naturally would not go easy on him, but in the last 9 battles, especially the 9th, Ling Han had already fully proven his strength, so there was really no need to send out any outstanding elite in the 10th match. The tournament authorities only limited the number of blood martial kings in order to ensure the prestige of this title. It was not that they were deadly determined to prevent anyone from gaining this title. Tang Yuan relaxed completely, and Zhao Shuang naturally had no interest to gamble with Tang Yuan again. The commentator was still excitedly introducing who Ling Han was. Even if Ling Han was very well known here, in truth, there were not many people that had truly seen him before. Thus, there were still bouts of shrieking here and there. Expressionless, Ling Han waited for his opponent to appear. This time, Li Long's opponent is Ma Yi. The commentator had not finished his words when he saw a commotion suddenly taking place at the passage of the tournament grounds. Peng, a figure flew out, and landed solidly on the ground with a bang. Clearly, it was not that person that had leaped out on his own, because a solid blow had landed on his face. Half his face had already caved in. He was a 4th heaven celestial king, but at present, the peculiar light around him was blurred and vague, representing that his flame of life was also flickering weakly. The commentator was stunned. That was because this was Ling Han's opponent, yet now he had actually almost been beaten to death. How was he supposed to fight Ling Han now? Furthermore, who would actually dare to act so recklessly in the tournament grounds? Didn't they know that this was the territory of the Azure Ghost Celestial King? Peng, another human figure shot out. This was a great man that was about 3 meters tall, but he had the hooves of a bull's tail, and the head of a bull, with a single horn growing from his head. Who else could it be but Niu Er? Even Ling Han was stunned. He wanted to open his spatial celestial tool and check if Niu Er's corpse was still there. Wait, wrong. He had just had a feast of fried beef with onions with the women yesterday. You were the one who killed my younger brother? This large man set his eyes on Ling Han, his eyes incredibly vicious and harsh. Oh, so this is Niu Er's older brother. Could it be that his name is Niu Er? Ling Han nodded. The taste was not too bad, just a little too tough. The large man exploded with fury. White steam spewed from his nostrils right onto the ground, and forcefully blasted 2 pits open in the ground. This was extremely shocking. It should be known that the bricks of the tournament ground were incredibly hard, strong enough to sustain a Celestial King tier battle. However, merely the breath from his nose was enough to create 2 holes in the ground. This was too terrifying. Niu Er. The commentator finally managed to speak. Even his voice was trembling because there were too many legends in the tournament grounds about Niu Er. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. This guy's name really was Niu Er. Boom. Everyone on the spectators' seats had gone mad. Practically 90% of them had stood up, cheering wildly, and the focus of their cheering was precisely Niu Er, as if he was an invincible warrior. Niu Er, the tournament has rules. You want to take revenge for your younger brother, and I can understand that. You can challenge him in the future, but you can't break the rules, or the results will be even worse for you, the commentator said. Though he was feeling ill at ease, this had gone too far beyond the rules, and he had to say this. Niu Er's eyes instantly glared at him as he declared menacingly, since you know that I wish to take revenge for my younger brother, shut up. Otherwise, not only will I kill you, I will also kill all your 3 concubines, 2 sons, and 6 daughters. The commentator's whole body trembled, and an expression of terror appeared on his face. Niu Er was even more frightening than Niu Er. Not only was it because the former's cultivation level was higher, natural talent better, and strength even bigger, it was also because he was crueler and even more merciless in character. Others would just kill the directly involved party and that was it. But Niu Er would also grab everyone else that had relations with the person involved, kill all of them in front of him, and only then would he finally kill the person involved. This was what built Niu Er's name renowned for viciousness. His name was really so frightening that it could stop crying children at night. But if Niu Er was really allowed to do as he liked, he would not be able to escape either. The commentator was just about to continue stubbornly persuading, yet suddenly started. He had received a message via divine sense. He immediately looked very respectful, and at the same time relaxed. Since this person had spoken, there was no need to fear even if the sky fell down on him. After a while, he said, I have just received instructions from Lord River. His lordship has said that due to the fact that Niu Er is grieving for his brother, he is especially allowed to battle. Instantly, the masses erupted in uproar. Something like this could be done. Though Niu Er had not revealed his cultivation level, those in the spectators' seats were all extremely clear that Niu Er was a 5th heaven celestial king, and a monarch star at that. According to the rules of the tournament, only a gap of a single heaven was allowed for sniping battles. Now, Niu Er was 2 heavens superior to Ling Han, and he was a monarch star at that, his battle prowess directly spiking to the 7th heaven. Wasn't this blatantly bullying? But the one who had spoken was the River Celestial King. Then, unless the Azure Ghost Celestial King spoke, no one would be able to change this decision. That was because the River Celestial King was the disciple of the Azure Ghost Celestial King, and his only disciple at that. Moreover, he was a 7th heaven Celestial King, and could be considered the number 1 among the spoiled young masters and young misses. In the spectators' seats, Tang Yuan, Zhao Shuang, and Yang Shaoling were all stunned. They were also helpless. Whether it was in terms of the power of their fathers, or their respective battle prowess, they were all far from comparable to the River Celestial King. Aside from accepting this, there was nothing else they could do, either. Ha 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 ha. Following a loud laugh, Lu Li appeared. It was still a Yuan behind him, a sword at his waist, while his hand was placed on the hilt of the sword, as if he would draw his sword at any moment to commit murder. Lu Li. Tang Yuan said through gritted teeth. He just happened to be in a bad mood. No matter how high an opinion he had of Ling Han, he knew that Ling Han would definitely be done for this time, and a dead man naturally would not be worth him expending further effort. At this moment, the last person he wanted to see was Lu Li, much less with the latter throwing salt on his wounds. Scram! I don't want to see you, Tang Yuan exclaimed. Yet Lu Li smirked. Tang Yuan, I have purposely come to see you make a fool of yourself. Why do you think that it is so hard, just for the sake of contending for the mere title of Blood Martial King? Could it be that it is you playing tricks? Tang Yuan asked, stunned. He had indeed guessed this before, but did not think that Lu Li would have that kind of power. Who else could it be but me? Lu Li erupted into laughter. Impossible, impossible, there is no way you could have done that. Tang Yuan was feeling very panicked internally. If these words were true, then the power that Lu Li had would be too shocking. Lu Li scoffed. Tang Yuan, what basis do you have to contend with me? I'll give you a chance. Come, kneel down and worship me, and I can take you as my lackey. Tang Yuan naturally could not embarrass himself like this. His old man was a ninth heaven celestial king as well, for better or worse. He just couldn't understand why Lu Li had suddenly gained such amazing power. Chapter 2573, Where does your confidence come from? It should be known that it was not just affecting the arrangements of fighters of the tournament grounds. Lu Li had even made it so that the Yin River Celestial King had stepped out for his sake. This kind of power was truly amazing. Lu Li, you are really impressive now. Yang Shaoling spoke up, a cold smirk on her face. He had clearly seen her sitting here, but not only did Lu Li not pay respects to her, he even acted as if he had not seen her at all. He was really too bold. Yang Shaoling, would you like to join my bed? Lu Li looked towards Yang Shaoling, unreservedly sweeping with his eyes over her breasts, hips, and thighs, and making no effort to conceal his desire. Tonight, I will give you this chance. Yang Shaoling's expression involuntarily turned ice cold. It was true that she enjoyed toying with men, but she had always been the one with the initiative. There had never been any man that dared to treat her like a plaything. Who did Lu Li think he was? He dared to be so insolent in front of her? Tang Yuan couldn't help but smirk internally. Lu Li had really forgotten himself when he even dared to tease Yang Shaoling. Didn't he know that this poisonous spider was merciless and cruel? Since he was courting death of his own volition, he deserved it. Your mouth is asking to be slapped. Yang Shaoling moved, grabbing out at Lu Li. She was a fourth heaven celestial king, and Lu Li was only a second heaven celestial king. The gap between them was as wide as the gap between heaven and earth. This attack was not anything that Lu Li could block at all. Shua, sword light flashed, its radiance illuminating the sky. Yang Shaoling retreated suddenly. She lowered her head in shock, and saw that a wound had abruptly appeared on her left breast. There was presently blood gushing from this wound. This gash was bone deep, and if it had been just the slightest bit deeper, her heart would have been destroyed. She raised her head, and saw there was another young man behind Lu Li. He was slowly sheathing his sword, and blood was slowly dripping down the tip of the blade. This was Yuan, and it was he that had moved in time previously. Not only had he protected Lu Li, he had even inflicted a light injury on Yang Shaoling. He was merely a third heaven celestial king, yet could wound a fourth heaven celestial king with a single strike. This was extremely freakish. Lu Li laughed loudly. Big Sister Ling, you had best just obediently come to my bed. My skill in that area isn't too bad, and I guarantee that you will feel great pleasure. Yang Shaoling's pretty face was dark. She was stunned by how astonishingly powerful Yuan was, but what confused her even further was Lu Li's boldness. His subordinate had wounded her, and not only was he not panicking or anxious, he more so dared to tease and even insult her. What was the source of his confidence? Similarly, neither Tang Yuan nor Zhao Shuang understood. However, there was one thing they could confirm: Lu Li was definitely no idiot, so there was no way that he would suddenly become crazy for no reason. Big Sister Ling, trust me, you will obediently come to my bed, and enjoy yourself beneath me, Lu Li teased Yang Shaoling again, but after speaking these words, he looked towards Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan, you too. I can wager with you that you will run to my manor, and kneel down to worship me, begging me to take you as my lackey. Though Tang Yuan was feeling ill at ease, he was still furious upon hearing this. He exclaimed, Lu Li, has your head been kicked by a donkey? If I were to surrender to you, I might as well be a woman then. Lu Li revealed a devious grin, and flopped down on a seat. Let's just watch the show first. I want to see how this brat that dares to go against me will slowly be torn apart. Though Tang Yuan and the others were extremely displeased, the fact that Yuan was still standing expressionlessly, hand on the hilt of his sword, rendered them completely unable to show their ire. Unless they could ask an elite to come and suppress Yuan, they would not be able to do anything to Lu Li at all. The three of them also sat down angrily. As they watched the arena, they were pondering internally that they would carefully investigate Lu Li after they returned. Why had he suddenly become so bold, and what kind of backing did he actually have? Their thoughts wandered in different directions, and in the arena, the battle between Ling Han and Niu Er was about to begin. Human pretty boy, I will definitely not grant you an easy death. Niu Er said menacingly. Before anyone who is related to you dies, I will allow you to live, and watch helplessly as these people die in front of you one after another. Ling Han was unmoved. The women were in his spatial celestial tool, and it was fine even if the others all died. Thus, as long as he himself was fine, the women would also be fine too. He had completely no worries. He broke into a grin. I have to thank you. Thank him? No matter how hard Niu Er thought, he had not expected these words to suddenly come from Ling Han. He faltered a while, and then asked, Thank me for killing you? My beef has almost run out, so you are here just in time, Ling Han said smilingly, his eyes sweeping over Niu Er with a picky glance. These were the eyes that surveyed a food ingredient. Niu Er couldn't help but rage. This brat had eaten his younger brother, and now was treating him as prey as well. It is you that is my prey, he shouted loudly, and couldn't help but move. Xiao, a silvery light blasted towards Ling Han. He was a fifth heaven monarch star, and his strength was who knew how many times stronger than Niu Er's. His vitality index had spiked to 10,000 points at that, even getting close to the height of 11,000 points. Even Ling Han was outmatched. Ling Han's figure flashed, dodging the silvery light. Peng, the silvery light crashed into the wall surrounding the tournament ground, directly embedding itself within. However, there was still a little bit left exposed. This was a silver bangle, and it was not known what material it was forged from, but it was frighteningly hard. Come. Niu Er grabbed towards the bangle. Xiao, the bangle immediately rocketed backwards, falling once more into his hoof. Fury burned in Ling Han's heart. He was not afraid of Niu Er, but Niu Er's appearance was clearly against the rules. What need was there for him to suffer this silently? He loudly announced, I want a change of opponent. According to the rules of the tournament, he had 3 chances to change his opponent, and after using this privilege, his row of successive wins would also be defaulted. He would have to start from the beginning again. Niu Er naturally ignored it. Waving his bangle, he smashed it towards Ling Han again. The commentator faltered. Ling Han's request was justifiable, but Niu Er's appearance had already broken the rules, yet it was supported by Yin River Celestial King, so this could no longer be judged as a normal situation. Should he speak or not? Right at this moment, he heard a voice again, issuing instructions for him. He immediately listened intently, and then announced loudly, Lord Yin River has spoken. The battle is to continue, and this battle has to end with death. What? Even if this tournament was called the Tournament of Death, there was still a sliver of chance for survival. As long as one managed to flee into the safety passage, the opponent could not pursue him any further. Of course, the fighting could still continue outside of this place, and he could still be killed. This was a place that had no laws. But in the territory of the Azure Ghost Celestial King, if there were rules, you had to adhere to them. This was the authority of a celestial king. And now, it actually had to be ended with the death of either side? There was no need to even consider. If it was a battle to the death, it would definitely be Ling Han dying. Wasn't it clear that he wanted Ling Han to die? Ling Han heard this, and couldn't help but sneer. This was really going too far. His killing intent blazed, and he looked towards Niu Er. Even if Niu Er's cultivation level was higher, and his battle prowess also surpassed Ling Han's, his heart also shuddered at this glance, a chill rising up his spine. However, he immediately suppressed this feeling. This was his enemy who had killed his brother. He was determined to kill him. Human trash, no matter how much you glare at me, it is useless. It can't change your destiny, which is death. He brandished the silver bangle, and it immediately grew large, turning into a metal circle that was 4 feet in diameter. Waving the silver bangle, he smashed it straight down on Ling Han. Chapter 2574, Unjust. Ling Han's expression was dark, with him practically exploding with fury. He did not mind that the opponent was strong, but what he could not accept was injustice. If Niu Er had stopped him on the streets, and wanted to avenge the death of his brother, he would have gladly accepted the battle challenge. But in this place, the other was clearly being a bully. This made Ling Han furious. He wrapped regulations around his fists, and met the approaching silver ring. Did Niu Er really think that Ling Han did not dare to confront it head-on? Boom! His fists slammed onto the silver ring, instantly causing waves to surge out in all directions. Tang, tang, tang. Both Ling Han and Niu Er took a few steps back. Duh, duh, duh. Blood continuously dripped from his fists, yet Ling Han did not even glance at his wounds. His physique had reached the height of 6th heaven, so even if he wrapped regulations around his fists, it was very hard to attain the level of 7th heaven. Thus, in the direct clash with the silver ring, his skin was broken and flesh was exposed, blood dripping. Niu Er was stunned. Could it be that this human was a relative of his? How could his physique possibly be so tough? It should be known that Niu Er was a member of the Herculean Iron Bull race. His skin was as tough as steel, and he possessed shocking defenses. Thankfully, being blasted by the Ring of Fiends, Ling Han was still outmatched and sustained injury. Niu Er only had to keep up the high pressure, and he was completely capable of breaking every single bone in Ling Han's body. GA1, again. Niu Er rushed forth once more. He brandished the silver ring, forming one wave of attack after another, and blasting even the air itself as he continued to rush towards Ling Han. Wang, wang, wang. The blast reached Ling Han, and caused even his skin to ripple. It looked like a breeze had blown over a water surface, causing waves. And Niu Er himself also surged over, waving the silver ring around, and smashing it towards Ling Han. Humph, are you in such a rush to be fried or steamed? Ling Han retorted coldly. He unleashed his own Dao, throwing both fists in a series of punches as he clashed with Niu Er. Though his fists kept sustaining injuries, the indestructible Celestial King physique possessed extremely strong recovery ability, and the indestructible true fluid had turned into a gaseous form that covered the insides of his body entirely. There was no need for him to actively use it at all. Hence, even though he continued to suffer injuries, the speed of his recovery was not low, either, allowing him to continuously keep himself in prime condition. Niu Er was shocked. Why was this human so hard to kill? He finally understood that merely using this one weapon was completely inadequate to kill Ling Han. It was no wonder that his brother had died at the latter's hand. True enough, this human was extremely freakish. You are worthy of more strength from me. Niu Er laughed madly. His horn glowed, and a strong power instantly surged from his body, causing the space all around him to collapse. Strange deflections happened to the light in the area. For their race, all their power was concentrated in their horn. Ha ha ha, just watch as I crush you. He charged out again, brandishing the silver ring wildly. When power had reached such heights as his had, there was no need to use any kind of technique at all. He only had to use brute force to crush his opponent. Ling Han was unmoved. Stretching out his hands, he grabbed a streak of great Tao and smashed it towards Niu Er. The two exchanged blows, and Niu Er was still enjoying the upper hand in this battle. Sponsored by Samsung C. Moore. He possessed greater battle prowess in the first place, and now that he used the natural talent of his race, he naturally became even stronger, causing Ling Han to retreat continuously from his powerful offensive. Ling Han's skin was also continuously splitting apart, blood spraying in all directions. The spectators screamed and howled at this scene. Every single person was shrieking. They were indeed stunned at how the tournament had not adhered to their own rules, but once the battle had begun, they no longer cared. Sympathy for Ling Han? Who cared? They only wanted to see a bloody slaughter, and as for whether it was just or unjust, what did that have to do with them? Kill him. Smash him alive. Sponsored by Blue Apron C. Moore. Skin him, and dig out his heart. Some of their preferences were extremely hardcore. Not only did they want Niu Er to kill Ling Han, the methods varied greatly as well. They were extremely cruel. Niu Er laughed loudly. Have you heard everyone's cheers? Human, stop this useless resistance, and surrender your life obediently. Ling Han swept an eye on the spectators' seats. Though he had long since known that the people here were all psychos, how these people were acting now still caused him a slight shock. He did not answer, and merely took out a red cloth, which he waved around at Niu Er. Fuck, do you take me for an ordinary bull? Niu Er couldn't help but explode with fury. He had long since gained intelligence. In fact, he was even more intelligent than the majority of humans. You actually take out a red cloth. Are you planning to have a bullfight? Just what great mockery was this? You are seeking death. Niu Er poured his power into the silver ring. Wang, this silver ring exploded with astonishing brilliance. It was as if it had turned into a sun. He suddenly puffed up his cheeks, and blew a gust of wind towards Ling Han. Instantly, a wide area of flames was spat out, blazing towards Ling Han. Sponsored by Expedia C. Moore. Ling Han faced this calmly. His enemy was powerful, and looked like he could overwhelm him at that. But the more he was in such a situation, the calmer and more composed he would be. Unleashing his own Tao, he defended himself perfectly. He was still sustaining injuries, but the fact that he could perform like this still stunned every single person. It should be known that he was only a third heaven celestial king, and there was a whole difference of 2 major tiers between himself and Niu Er. Furthermore, Niu Er was a monarch star. Logically, this should be a gap that could not be compensated for, yet now the two of them had already exchanged over 1,000 moves, and Ling Han was merely covered all over in blood. He had not lost any limbs, and his battle prowess was still flaring. This was practically a miracle. On the spectators' seats, Tang Yuan and the others were all secretly cheering Ling Han on. At present, they were now suppressed by Lu Li, and if Ling Han could survive this, it'd be as if they defeated Lu Li in a clash of another sort. Meanwhile, Lu Li was slightly stunned, and he couldn't help but turn to look towards Ayuan. The strength of Ling Han's battle prowess made him think of Ayuan. This was also a freak that could defeat his enemies even with a difference of cultivation level between them. In fact, was Ayuan as strong as Ling Han? He did not know, and did not have any answer at all. However, it was fine. This was a battle to the death. Even if it took over 10 years, it would still have to end with the death of either of the two fighters. Ling Han battled strongly. Though he continued to sustain injuries, his vitality had still reached a new height. Battling so strongly with such a powerful enemy without any kind of help meant the guillotine of death was just hanging above his head. This caused him to compel himself to extract every single bit of potential he possessed. Sponsored by Airbnb. See more. On the spectators' seats, all the cheers were in support of Niu Er, wanting nothing more than for Ling Han to quickly get killed. Best case scenario, his head could be smashed to bits, and his body blasted into a shower of blood. The more terrible the death, the better. Ling Han fought alone. It was as if he was opposing the whole heaven and earth with how extremely alone he was. But his eyes were becoming brighter and brighter. He was a very stubborn man. The more the situation was like this, the higher his fighting spirit would soar, the stronger his determination would be, and the more he wanted to rise up, and then slap the reality into everyone's face. Niu Er was also becoming more and more maniacal. This kind of cheering was very infectious, causing his eyes to turn bloodshot as he yearned for Ling Han's blood. Die! 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 He attacked widely. Xiao, a death ray shot out of his single horn, and even a ninth heaven celestial king would suffer severe injury if he was taken off guard by this. Ling Han stepped onto the regulations of space, dodging this death ray. He was storing up power for a counterattack, and he would not attack, but if he did, it would definitely be a world-shaking blow. The enemy was strong, while he himself was weak. He had to succeed with a single blow, or the battle would definitely drag on endlessly. Niu Er had unleashed his full battle prowess, using even the death ray. He was already keeping nothing back. He wanted to use his strongest offensive to crush Ling Han, and kill him in a single stroke. Ling Han was calm and silent. Suddenly, his eyes sharpened, and his fighting spirit shot sky high. He moved. Regulations of time surged, and Niu Er's figure instantly froze for a moment. However, Niu Er's strength was too great. Even the regulations of time could not imprison him, and he immediately regained his freedom. However, it was just an instant, and Ling Han had also charged towards him, appearing in front of him. The divine demon sword was already prepared to drink blood. Chapter 2575, Killing Niu Er. Niu Er was stunned at first. He had not thought that Ling Han would actually have held something back in such disadvantageous conditions as he had previously been in, and had not used such a powerful weapon like the regulations of time. However, with Niu Er's overwhelming power, he was also just slightly affected. Could this have any influence on the greater picture? Furthermore, you are delivering yourself to me, that really is seeking death. Could it be that you don't know that I am from the Herculean Iron Bull race? This name very clearly signified that not only did he have shockingly great power, he also had an extremely tough physique. He stretched out his arms to wrap around Ling Han, wanting to use his frightening physique and power to forcefully crush Ling Han into mush. Human, you are really stupid, to actually deliver yourself right into my hands. He smirked coldly. Though Ling Han's physique was also very strong, he was sure that with his crushing hold, Ling Han definitely would only have all his bones shattered. With a pu, the tip of a blade stabbed out of Niu Er's back. The expression on Niu Er's face instantly froze, and blood was also gushing from his mouth. He released his arms as he stumbled. Then, he looked dumbly at that sword that did not have even the slightest mark of blood which Ling Han was holding in his grip. This was a celestial tool. He immediately realized it, but when he lowered his head to look at his own chest, there was already a bloody hole there. Letting a celestial tool land a direct hit on a vital point, even a ninth heaven celestial king would be dying. He looked disbelievingly at Ling Han. Under such harsh conditions previously, this human had still not drawn his celestial tool. Otherwise, no matter what, he could have fought him to a tie. How could the might of a celestial tool be underestimated? The other was too good at enduring. He clearly had grasp of the regulations of time, yet did not use it, and all that was so that he could land a fatal blow on him with the divine sword. Indeed, at the beginning, Niu Er would definitely have been on guard, and would not have allowed Ling Han to easily approach him, but now that the battle had reached this point, he had been confident that he'd known all of Ling Han's trump cards, and that was why he had carelessly fallen for this. It was no fault of his that he had been careless, but rather it was Ling Han who was really too good at enduring. This was a battle in which he could have died at any time. Niu Er had not died a worthless death, but he was still resentful. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and stated calmly, "Don't worry. I will definitely not let you go to waste. Steamed cow's head, braised beef, wine-simmered oxtail, I already have everything planned out." Pooh, Niu Er spat out another mouthful of blood. It was not enough that he was killed, he still had to become a cooking ingredient and be eaten by Ling Han. But life was already completely leaving his body. No matter how resentful he felt, he could only lie down on the ground, with his eyes staring wide, yet there was no longer any sign of life from him. Ling Han moved quickly, and immediately stowed Niu Er's body into his spatial celestial tool. This was the spoils of his battle. This was a great turn of events that no one had expected. All the spectators had still been cheering Niu Er on, and anticipating that they would see how Niu Er crushed Ling Han into mush, but who could have expected that such a great turnaround would happen? The cheers instantly stopped. While it could not be considered a dead silence, it was also completely quiet. Only the sound of heavy breathing could be heard here and there as they looked dumbly at Ling Han, who was bathed entirely in blood. Inconceivable. This was really too inconceivable. Lu Li had initially been all smiles, yet now this smile had abruptly frozen. He appeared very awkward. Meanwhile, Tang Yuan and the others sighed in relief before they burst into laughter. Great, this was really too great. Previously, they had been beaten down on so much, yet now this development was equivalent to having slapped Lu Li right in the face, causing them to feel such pleasure that even all the pores of their bodies had opened up in satisfaction. Humph. Lu Li truly could not hold himself back, and slapped a hand on the armrest. Lu Li, this is the consequence of being too arrogant. As a person, no matter what you are doing, you should never forget yourself in your arrogance. Tang Yuan laughed loudly. When else should he counterattack if not now? Just wait, in a few days, I will have Li Long challenge your blood martial king. Lu Li stood up, turned around, and left with a wave of his sleeve. Hey, don't go. Are you such a sore loser? Tang Yuan continued to mock him. Shua, a sword light swept past, and Tang Yuan was silenced abruptly. That was because the tip of a blade was already leveled at his throat, and the hilt of the sword was held in Yuan's hand. This man was capable of wounding even Yang Shaoling, who was a fourth heaven celestial king, with a single strike, what more Tang Yuan, who was only in the second heaven. Tang Yuan immediately felt his limbs become icy. He did not dare to move the slightest bit, because he had already seen Yuan move once before. This kind of person had completely no concept of fear. If he wanted to use his background to make the other wary of him, that would be truly delusional of him. Tang Yuan, I'll return those words to you. Lu Li retorted coldly. Otherwise, you will only be asking for your own humiliation. Yuan withdrew his sword, and followed quietly behind Lu Li, keeping close. Not until the two of them had disappeared from sight did Tang Yuan finally collapse and sit on the ground. He felt cold sweat covering his whole back. Though there was an ocean of cheers around him, he could not hear any bit of it. All that was in his mind was that scene from before. He had been so close to the gates of the netherworld. Now that he thought back to it, it still caused his heart to throb wildly, as if his heart was about to jump out of his throat. In the arena, Ling Han looked coldly at all the spectators that had already risen to their feet. Everyone had already digested the fact that Niu Er had died by his hand, and were beginning to cheer for him. Here, the one who died was worth nothing, while the strong could gain supreme glory. Ling Han stuck out a thumb, raised skywards. This action immediately excited the crowds even more. A new blood martial king was paying them respect, cheering with them as well. However, Ling Han slowly turned his hand down, his thumb pointing at the ground, which turned into a mockery of everyone. The cheers instantly stopped. Everyone was looking at Ling Han, their eyes filled with rage. What do you mean by that? Ling Han continued to provoke them. He gestured a slicing motion at his throat. Instantly, booing rose up all around. Damn pig, you should be disemboweled. I want to eat your brains. Can anyone go down there and kill him? He's actually so arrogant. All the spectators were enraged. Though there were indeed some unconventional blood martial kings, there was definitely no precedent like Ling Han, who was provoking the spectators like this. On the spectators' seats, Tang Yuan was also very displeased. A powerful blood martial king was not just the simple matter of pride. The salary paid was also considerable with every battle they took part in. But what was this salary determined by? Popularity. Even if you were just a blood martial king with a single win, as long as the spectators loved you, you could still get an astronomical salary, and in Ling Han's case, if he was despised by the spectators, his salary would also be astonishingly low. One of the things Tang Yuan hated the most, which could even be ranked in the top 3, was losing money. Humph, he would definitely teach Ling Han a lesson. In the arena, Ling Han swept a glance around him, and said, if anyone wants to die, just come on down. Foreign races are even more welcome, as long as they are not the likes of rats or worms. I will definitely ensure you can be made full use of. When the spectators heard this, they were even more furious. Are you treating us as cooking ingredients here? However, while sounds of displeasure rose up all around, no one came down to the arena. That was because one would have to be a blood martial king himself to challenge a blood martial king. They did not have the Ain River Celestial King backing them up, which would allow them to ignore the rules. Ling Han did not do any other provoking actions. It was already enough. He strode forwards, and entered into the passage of life. Then, he left the tournament ground, and returned to Tang Yuan's courtyard. He needed to digest this battle with Nyoda. It would definitely give him boundless appreciation. A few days later, he came out of seclusion, and felt that his cultivation level had indeed increased greatly. The doors to the fourth heaven were already close at hand. As expected, the fastest path to increasing his cultivation level was battle. Tang Yuan held another celebratory banquet in Ling Han's honor, but when the banquet had proceeded halfway, a person suddenly came over, and said that Yang Shaoling was summoning Ling Han for an audience. Chapter 2576, Limits. After the man had said these words, everyone bore a strange expression. Yang Shaoling had indeed fulfilled her promise, and was making a move on Ling Han. Ling Han did not know who Yang Shaoling was, and couldn't help but look towards Tang Yuan, asking, who is Yang Shaoling? Tang Yuan patted Ling Han's shoulder. You'll find out when you get there. However, let me warn you, big sister Ling's temper is even hotter than mine. You must not anger her, or you will definitely be in trouble. Though Ling Han was not afraid, he was internally surprised. It looked like this Yang Shaoling had even greater power than Tang Yuan, and that was why she could summon him as she liked. He was curious internally, and thus nodded, setting out with the man who had come. Very soon, they arrived at a courtyard. The visitor led the way ahead, and brought Ling Han to a massive great hall. This should be a bathroom because there was a colossal bath in the ground, occupying 80% of the space of the entire room. Hot water filled the bath, steam wafting upwards. Petals floated on the surface of the water, lightly moving with the waves. A woman was seated in the bath, and 2 maids were washing her hair. Her ink-black hair could reach her waist, and now it was moving with the waves like water plants. This woman had her back turned on Ling Han, so Ling Han could only see her snow-white back, but there was a flower tattooed there. Ling Han could not distinguish what type of flower it was, because he had not been very long in this dimension. Lady Ling, Li Long is here. The man knelt on the ground with his eyes lowered, not daring to allow his gaze to wander the slightest bit. Leave us, the woman with her back turned on him said, her voice seductive and graceful. Understood. The man immediately retreated out, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Voila, the sound of water splashing rang out. That woman turned around, revealing a seductive, captivating face, and she was completely unconcerned that Ling Han could see the alluring beauty of her breasts. Not only did she not bother to try to conceal them, she instead stuck them out even further, making them look even more erect. "Am I beautiful?" she asked. This woman naturally was young Xiaoling. Ling Han smiled naturally, and replied, "Very beautiful." These were honest words. The woman was indeed very beautiful. Though her beauty had not reached the extent of the Empress, she could still be considered an outstanding beauty, especially that kind of dazzling beauty that carried thorns. It was indeed something that would make one's heart beat wildly. Of course, this much definitely was incapable of moving his heart. Young Xiaoling broke into a loud laughter, appearing wild and unconstrained. She hooked a finger at Ling Han. "Then what are you still standing around for? Come over quickly. Could it be that you are not a man?" Though she was saying such bold words, the two maids only acted as if they heard nothing. There was no change to their expressions, and they merely continued their respective tasks. Ling Han shook his head. "Apologies, I am already married." "So what?" Young Xiaoling was still smiling extremely boldly. "You think that I have set my eyes on you, and wish to spend the rest of my life with you? You are overthinking things, and think far too highly of yourself. I only wish to play around with you." Ling Han was surprised. This woman actually enjoyed playing with men? Immediately, he laughed in spite of himself. Men could play around with women, so why couldn't women with power and ability play around with men? What more when it was in this kind of bizarre place? This had nothing to do with him. "If I do not go along with you, could it be that you plan to force me?" Ling Han said, smiling in spite of himself. Young Xiaoling laughed loudly. "Do you think that only men can force women?" "Wrong, wrong. Though you are a new blood martial king, and have extremely strong battle prowess, you are still just in the third heaven, after all. Could you be a match for seventh heaven or eighth heaven celestial kings? My father is a ninth heaven celestial king, and as long as he moves, he can instantly destroy you. Faced with death, will you obey or disobey?" Ling Han broke into a grin. In this place, he would repress all his temper, but would never abandon his limits. For him to bed another woman in order to preserve his own life, and he even had to play the role of the one being played around with? That was simply impossible. He shook his head. Miss Yang had best find someone else. I have no interest in that. He turned around and left. Stop right there. Young Xiaoling suddenly stood up. Voila, splashes rang out. She pointed a finger at Ling Han. If you dare to walk out these doors, I guarantee that you will have a tragic end. Ling Han ignored her, walking onwards smoothly. Come. Report. Young Xiaoling was just about to speak when a celestial king suddenly burst through the doors. He knelt on the ground, interrupting what she was about to say. What is it? She demanded impatiently. Lord Yang Ke summons, this celestial king said. Young Xiaoling's face involuntarily paled, fear flashing through her eyes. She paused for at least a breath's time, and replied, I understand. That celestial king waited for a moment, and then continued, My lord has said that young miss should set everything aside, and immediately set out. Young Xiaoling took a deep breath, and said darkly, I already said, I understood. Only then did this celestial king not continue to speak, but he was still kneeling on the ground. Clearly, as long as young Xiaoling was not moving, he would continue kneeling there. Robe me. Young Xiaoling spread out her arms, and the two maids hurriedly took robes and helped her dress. Let's go. She humphed, and glared harshly at that celestial king, almost shooting out a kick at him. Ling Han could vaguely hear something, but naturally would not be taking it to heart. He returned to Tang Yuan's courtyard because he wanted to get himself an ascending dragon pill, and study just what kind of ingredients were used to concoct it. Why have you returned so quickly? When Tang Yuan saw Ling Han, he was instantly filled with surprise. It should be known that there was no possibility for any men that this poisonous spider had played with before to even stand up without lying on the bed for half a year or so. He had already prepared himself. When Ling Han was taken back, he would allow him to rest for 8 to 10 years, and only then would he have him challenge Lu Li's blood martial king. Yet Ling Han had actually walked back on his own. This really caused him extreme shock. Ling Han merely smiled, and asked, "The ascending dragon pill?" Tang Yuan instantly frowned. These words from Ling Han displeased him greatly. "Who do you think you are that you can use such a tone to speak to me? Li Long, do you think that just because you have become a blood martial king, you can disrespect young Master Tang?" Luo Yang immediately leaped out, pointing at Ling Han. "Tui, you are even less than nothing in front of young Master Tang. Kneel down quickly, and beg young Master Tang for forgiveness." Ling Han turned to look at Luo Yang, and asked, "Looks like you truly have forgotten the pain now that your injuries have recovered. Do you want to die?" "Li Long, you are too arrogant," Luo Yang said sinisterly. He did not mind pouring oil on the flames, and making it so that Ling Han would fall out completely with Tang Yuan. "Try and say that again," Ling Han said smilingly. "You ignorant, stupid." Pung! Ling Han moved, blasting Luo Yang's head into bits with a single punch. That headless body was still pointing at him, looking slightly funny, but at the same time very bizarre. Luo Yang had provoked Ling Han repeatedly. Did he think that the latter was a pushover? Pooh! The spray of blood splattered onto Tang Yuan, causing him to shudder strongly. He had a surreal feeling, as if he was living in a dream. Ling Han actually dared commit murder right in front of him. Furthermore, the victim was one of his lackeys at that, the son of a seventh heaven celestial king. Hiss, could it be that this world had gone mad? First, there was Yuan, and now came Ling Han. They all did not pay any attention to second-generation young masters and misses like them. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.